I'd like to call our April 11th, 2019 Commission meeting into session. This time I'd like to call on Commissioner Steve Irwin. If he would, please come forward to say our prayer, to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag and the Tennessee flag. Members of the audience, please stand. Mr. Irwin, Commissioner, you're recognized.
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Gracious Father, we ask that you bless this meeting and our decisions tonight. We ask that you let them be honoring to you. And we ask that you protect all the leadership of this county and our nation. And just give us a good meeting tonight and let us make the decisions that you want us to make. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Through white stars on a field of blue, God keeps strong and never true. It is with pride and love that we salute the flag of Tennessee. Roll call. Roll call. There we go. Mr. Phillips. Mr. Phillips. Record the vote.
We have a quorum, 21 present.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And we have a quorum. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome tonight. We're glad that we have our guest here with us tonight. So welcome to our commission meeting. At this time, I'd like to call on Chairman Pro Tem Jeff Phillips for the approval of the minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Ketron. I have reviewed those minutes. I find them to be in order. There is one particular update that needs to be noted on page 978, item K6B. This is the resolution regarding the boards and committees. The original resolution is in the minutes. The replacement resolution is not. I understand that it has just been signed by the mayor and will be added to the minutes. With that exception, I move that the minutes be approved.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have a motion and I have a second. Any questions or objections? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. I'd like to call on Commissioner Paul Johnson to read our resolutions of sympathy for Dr. Jack E. Forrest and Dr. O. Tom Johns. You recognize, Commissioner.
Members of the Commission and members in the audience. This is a resolution of sympathy for a great friend of mine that passed away. They've been friends of mine for many years. They probably wouldn't want to say how many, but it's been quite a few years, and it's my honor and privilege. Resolution of sympathy. Whereas it was with great sadness that the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners learned of the death of Dr. Jack E. Forrest, a friend of many. And whereas Dr. Forrest is served by his wife of 52 years, Carolyn Forrest, their children Edward Forrest of Murfreesboro, Kimberly O'Neill and husband Steve of Lebanon, Nathan Forrest of Las Vegas, Nevada, and Micah Forrest of Murfreesboro, and Rachel Forrest of Nashville, 3 grandchildren, Stephen, Kevin, and Marcy O'Neill. And whereas Dr. Forrest was a United States Air Force veteran serving during the Korean War and was a graduate of the University of Arkansas, where he received his BBA, MBA, and PhD degrees. And whereas his career spanned many years teaching thousands of students at the University of Arkansas, MTSU, Belmont, Cumberland, Martin Methodist, and Trevecca Nazarene universities. And whereas Dr. Forrest was a faithful member of Forest Hills Baptist Church, he was an ordained deacon, and he taught Sunday school for many years. Most recently, he taught Sunday school at the Arabic Baptist Church in Murfreesboro. And whereas we know that his passing has caused great sadness to his family and friends, therefore be it resolved that the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners, at its regular session on this 11th day of April 2019, does hereby extend sincere sympathy to the family of Dr. Jack Forrest, and be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution of sympathy be forwarded to the family of Dr. Forrest and by the clerk of this legislative body. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion. Is there a second? And a second. Any questions? Without objection, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
All right. I believe Dr. Rebecca Johns Womack might be in the audience. All right. All right. How are you? I'm good. Fine. Good. All right. The resolution of sympathy for Dr. O. Tom Johns, very, very prominent person in this community, and I was one of the E pluribus unum of having a knee worked on by Dr. Johns, and I've been able to get around very good since then. All right. So, resolution of sympathy. Whereas it was with great sadness that the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners learned of the death of Dr. O. Tom Johns, Jr., a friend of many, and whereas Dr. Johns is survived by his loving wife of 50 years, Betsy Kaufman Johns, his daughter, Dr. Rebecca Johns Womack, and her husband, Lane, of Murfreesboro, his son, Lieutenant Colonel Tommy Johns of Fort Worth, Texas, and his wife, Larissa, son of Dr. Judd Johns of Boulder, Colorado, two grandsons, Oscar Thomas Johns IV and Omar Tucker Johns, and a great-granddaughter, Grace Womack. And whereas Dr. Johns was an orthopedic surgeon whose admiration for athletes was shown through the great care and attention he gave as a team doctor for Middle Tennessee University and Rutherford County Schools. And whereas Dr. Johns joined the staff of Vanderbilt University in 1974, ultimately serving as chief resident in orthopedic surgery. And in 1978, he came back home to Murfreesboro and opened up his own orthopedic practice, which later became Middle Tennessee Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, which in 2005 joined Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance, TOA, the largest surgery group of its genre in Nashville and Middle Tennessee. And whereas Dr. Johns showed great compassion for others while living a life of service as a physician and received numerous recognitions and awards from the medical community, including the 2010 Thomas A. Brady Award from the American Orthopedic Society for Sports Medicine for his dedication to excellence in sports medicine. And whereas he also served as a physician for the U.S. track and field team in the 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta. And MTSU named him a distinguished alumni in 1992. And whereas we know that his passing has caused great sadness to his family and friends, now therefore be it resolved that the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners, at its regular session on this 11th day of April 2019, does hereby extend sincere sympathy to the family of Dr. O. Tom Johns, Jr., and be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution of sympathy be forwarded to the family of Dr. Johns by the clerk of this legislative body. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion and a second. Yes, you are.
Absolutely.
All right. Very, very quickly, I want to thank Rutherford County so much for the love and everything that you all have extended to our family. It's beyond measure. And, you know, Dad was recently diagnosed with a incurable lung disease, and he went very, very fast. A lot of people didn't even know he was sick. We were actually at his visitation this exact same time last week. And for the first time, I'm going to be very honest, I asked God yesterday, why? Why would you take him at 72 years old? And the answer was very clear. His work here was done. And God definitely said that. Dad was going to retire in September, and that's where he shared his love of this community and his faith is through his work. And that would have been done in September. So some of the things that I took away that I want to share with you all from his funeral, that if we can let that live on, that would be great. He loved this community. He loved Rutherford County. And I want to encourage all of you in your profession to do everything you can for people, just like he did. Go out of your way, please. I know we've got a lot of the EMS here tonight. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart with everything that you do. Also, don't be afraid to tell somebody you love them. That's something else that y'all know. He said, I love you, brother, all the time. And the third thing is if you believe in Jesus, would you please share that with somebody? Because y'all know he did that, and he prayed with every single patient before he operated on them. And I'm going to continue passing out candy. When you see me in public, I'm going to carry on that tradition. But again, I want to thank you all for everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rebecca, thank you. Thank you. Well, Rebecca, let me, Tommy was, Dr. Johns was a personal friend of mine and a true, if you talk about true blue, Dr. Johns was true blue, and he touched thousands over the decades, thousands of young men who were not just one school, but it was Riverdale, Oakland, Blackman, whichever new school came on, and he was treating kids from Woodbury to Columbia. I mean, he was well known all over this state, and he did a lot of it free because he just believed in taking care of these young men and women to make sure that they were healed properly so they could enjoy the rest of their life. And so he will truly be missed, Rebecca, and I know I'm going to miss him a lot. I went under his knife 3 different times, and he prayed for me every time before we went into the OR. So thank you for attending tonight. I'm sorry your mother couldn't be here, but please share that this commission sends their love back to her and to you. Okay, thank you. At this point in time, I'd like to call on need to vote on the resolution for adoption. All in favor of the resolution for Dr. Tom O. Johns, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. At this point in time, I'd like to call on Pettis Reed, Chairman Reed, if you would come forward, read the resolution and appreciation for Mr. Mike Nunley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, there are a lot of things in life that we somewhat take for granted, and one of those things is when we dial in 911 or we call for an ambulance, we expect it to be there. And we seem to think that it's always been there. But when I read this resolution and you hear the history of what has happened here in Rutherford County, I think you'll no longer take what we have here for granted. Resolution of appreciation for Mike Nunley. Whereas Mike Nunley has served this community well for 45 years while serving as director of the Rutherford County Emergency Medical Services. Whereas Mr. Nunley will retire from his position effective April the 15th, 2019. And whereas he has guided the organization through many changes over the years, and in his quiet way has been responsible for growing RCEMS from a 1 ambulance team working less than 1,000 calls per year to running 16 ambulances per day with approximately 35,000 calls per year. And whereas Mr. Nunley started the EMS operation in a closet at Rutherford Hospital on October the 15th, 1972, moved to McFadden Community Center on April the 1st, 1977, and due to the increased volume of ambulance calls, Middle Tennessee Medical Center offered the free use of one of its buildings to RCEMS in 1987. And whereas, along with the County Commission, he was instrumental in the expansion of ambulance stations, and today we have 12 stations located strategically in Rutherford County, as well as a special operations building, a communications dispatch center, and a special operations team, which consists of personnel being trained in dive rescue, swift water rescue, hazmat certification, rope rescue, cave rescue, extrication certification, trench rescue, tactical operations with SWAT, bike medics, and a community relations team. In addition, we started the only EMS Honor Guard team in the state of Tennessee. And whereas Mr. Nunley has guided the Rutherford County Emergency Medical Services to become the best EMS agency in the state of Tennessee. And whereas Mr. Nunley has demonstrated in countless ways his dedication to the welfare of others and has earned the respect and affection of people from all walks of life and all ages who are proud to call him friend. Now therefore be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners at its regular session on this 11th day of April 2019 that we hereby extend sincere appreciation to Mike Nunley for his dedicated service to the citizens of Rutherford County and wish him much success and happiness in all his future endeavors. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution of appreciation be forwarded to Mr. Nunley by the clerk of this legislative body. Resolved this 11th day of April 2019. Mr. Chairman, I move for its approval.
I have a motion and a second. Motion for passage. Any questions? And a second. Without objection, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Commissioner. Now it's time for public comments, and we have two people here signed up to speak. We ask that you come forward when I call your name, and you will give your name and address, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes. We have two citizens tonight to speak on the legal services agreement. First, I have Mike Linton. Mr. Linton, if you will, please come forward. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. My name is Mike Linton, and before I start my general comments, I'd simply like to say that I hope we here in Rutherford County don't go to the point where sweet moments like we just experienced, these wonderful commendations of sorrow and praise disappear from our culture. It's really a wonderful place to live where the County Commission can do things like that, and thank you. My name is Mike Linton. I live at 155 Spence Creek Lane here in Rutherford County. I'm also the president of the Rutherford Neighborhood Alliance. As the county begins a relationship with the new county attorney and starts to consider its legal services agreement, we of the Rutherford Neighborhood Alliance would like commissioners to consider a matter of fundamental importance, and that is cost. Is it reasonable that commissioners know the total of how much money the county is spending on various legal services, and on what kind of services is the money being spent? We think that's not only reasonable, but the most reasonable place to start. But we here in the Rutherford Neighborhood Alliance don't have answers to those questions. For the past 10 years, the RNA has pored over public record documents, billing records, budget reports, contractual obligations, and so forth. We found some items of interest about which we reported to you earlier, but we found it surprisingly difficult to get a clear picture of what our total legal services, our total legal expenses have been, or even what situations require legal work. There's a clear distinction between litigation and general legal services, but even here, in regards to the general legal services, we found that funds for legal matters are drawn from at least 3 different budget lines. In regards to the kinds of matters that require litigation work, the legal services agreement is itself opaque. Section 2C, subparagraph 1, draws a distinction between general legal services and, quote, quasi-judicial proceedings, and also, quote, otherwise adverse matters, issues that merit pay additional to that stipulated in the agreement. But what makes a, quote, quasi-judicial proceeding, something that lies outside of the general legal services? And who makes that determination? And what is the expense of this kind of thing? We don't know. Certainly, as the Commissioners look into the legal services agreement, ambiguities like this one will need to be clarified. But most important will be the discovery of the full, true cost of our legal affairs. We can't make a road map if we don't have a map of the land on which the road runs. And that accounting is the geography on which our legal services must be built. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Susan Allen. Ms. Allen, if you would, give us your name and address for the record. You're recognized.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Susan Allen. I live at 2031 Nelson Lane in Murfreesboro. And once again, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to address you this evening. Assume nothing. Regarding the upcoming changes to county legal representation, I'd like to remind you of what a professional attorney, whom you respect and admire, told the March 18th Steering Committee. Mr. McCreary advised his current contract provides for Nick Christensen to work as the interim county attorney. He said, no action is required on the part of the county, and it can proceed under the current contract as written. You heard from Josh expressing that he believes Mr. Christensen, his law partner who is just into his 7th year with the firm, has been involved with county work and has a good understanding of the operation. I don't doubt that Mr. Christensen will do his very best to fill some very big shoes, especially as he takes on Candy Crush and other lawsuits, in addition to the general legal services and his own private clients. The rules and regulations of the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners states that it is the role of a commission committee to investigate and study matters, provide information, and present recommendations to the commission. Let me repeat. It is the role of a commission committee to investigate and study matters, provide information, and present recommendations to the commission. In spite of this directive, liking the status quo, appreciating Mr. McCreary's experience and his recommendation, and reasonable cost were some of the points made to give Mr. Christensen the job. Perhaps that qualifies as investigating and studying matters, but if that's all the information you're getting from the steering committee meeting upon which to make your decision tonight, then perhaps a deeper look is necessary. I think you're putting the cart before the horse by confirming Mr. Christensen before the legal services agreement is revised and before you understand it. It has been suggested that requests for proposals from other attorneys would provide a comparison and a clearer picture of what is possible. Getting RFPs would be wise in order to know what you are possibly overlooking that would be of greater benefit to the county. Please consider that no action is required for Mr. Christensen to serve as county attorney. There is time to really investigate and study, and RFPs would provide valuable insight to other possibilities. And I look forward to hearing your discussion tonight. Assume nothing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Next on the agenda is elections and confirmations. I call on steering Vice Chair, Commissioner Harris. You're recognized, Commissioner.
Commissioners, you'll see a list of notaries on your iPod. I make a motion for their approval.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to abstain from this vote. My name is on the list of applicants, and I use this in my professional career. I don't want any kind of allegations of impropriety, so I would request that the record show that I'm abstaining.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Without objection, all of those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries.
Commissioners, we need to file a vacancy on Agriculture Advisory Board for Steve Piercy. The steering committee recommends Commissioner Shanto Sorrento. I move for his approval.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions? Without objection, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
We need to announce to fill a vacancy on the Public Building Authority to fill unexpired term of Steve Waldron. Term will expire on 2020. We need to.
Go ahead.
We need to announce a vacancy on the Board of Zoning Appeals. We will be discussion for the next steering committee, first Monday of the month. We have recommendations from the mayor on membership of Historical Properties Review Board. They are as follow: Greg Tucker, County Historian; Mike Picklemeyer, Architect; Picklesheimer, sorry, I apologize; Charlotte P., Planning Commission; Bill Jakes, Bill Bryson, and Bill Shaw.
Is Mr. Tucker here with us tonight? Is he not here? I thought he was going to show. I talked to him earlier today. He was going to come and kind of explain to the rest of the commission exactly what was the process. This is new for the commission to have this membership for the Historic Properties Review Board, but we'll get him to come back and explain that to the full commission at some point in time, if that's okay. So we have a motion. Is there a second? And a second. Any questions? Without objection, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Commissioner, we'd like to announce the appointment of the following for Risk Management Committee: Amber Brown to replace Veronica Buchanan, term will expire 2020, and Lois Miller to replace Ricky Marlin, term to expire on 2020.
Thank you. Now we have a resolution to approve the consent agenda. I call on Chairman Pro Tem Jeff Phillips. We have a motion. Go ahead.
I reviewed those agenda items. I find that they're all appropriate for the consent agenda, and I move that the consent agenda be adopted.
So we have a motion. Is there a second? Any questions? Without objection, all of those in favor signify by saying aye. Need to go on the board.
We have to.
Madam Secretary, if
Please
you would,
cast your vote.
Everybody's on the board, please cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
21 yes, motion passes.
Yeah, 6:30. Is there any unfinished business? We have about 1 minute before we get into our public hearings. Any unfinished business? We're going to wait just a few seconds before we get into our public hearing. Ready? All right, it's 6:30, now it's time for our public hearings. I call on County Planning Director, Mr. Doug DeMasi. Mr. DeMasi, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor Ketchum. And good evening, Mayor, members of the commission. We have 7 different public hearings for you tonight, which is pretty pretty much the last 3 or 4 months combined at one time. So we'll try to get through these as efficiently as possible. The first of these is a request by Mr. Wayne Miller. This is for property located along Blackman Road. The property is currently zoned residential medium density, RM. They're asking for a planned unit development. This application was originally considered and approved by the Planning Commission back in December of 2018. The pattern book originally proposed 203 units. 145 of them were going to be single-family detached units, while the remaining 58 would be a 2-unit attached product. After the Planning Commission meeting, the applicant's representative met with staff and asked about the possibility of removing the 2-unit attached product, instead building all single-family units. Staff was supportive of the request, but felt that that change was enough that it should go back to the Planning Commission before being brought to this body tonight. The revised master plan, which is, there is a copy of this both in your agenda packet on my report as well as the pattern book, which is also on your iPads, now shows a total of 196 single-family homes, which is a reduction of 7 units from the previous total. Minimum lot size for this product will be about 8,800 square feet. Minimum house sizes would be 1,450 square feet. This development would be served by a decentralized sewer system or a step system. We see those quite frequently in the county. Open space areas are located throughout the development with a formal open space near the center. Just for a little bit of historical background regarding this particular application, this plan did originally have a small commercial element, but that was removed prior to the official application being made to the Planning Commission due to the concerns being brought up at the neighborhood meeting. The proposed street layout that you see on the pattern book or on the master plan is unchanged from the original submittal. They are showing 2 access points along Blackman Road. The main entrance aligns with Jameson Downs Drive to the west, and there's a proposed connection to the Heatherwood subdivision to the east, with also stub streets to both the north and the south. The applicants did submit a traffic study with this application. Those recommendations are located also within your agenda packets in the planning report. There's a number of improvements that were explained in that report, and what they're going to do, I won't go into a whole lot of details unless you just want more specifics, but they are going to be dedicating right-of-way for some possible future road improvements to Blackman Road. At some point, that'll be a 5-lane road, but they are dedicating some of that right-of-way, so we'll have that. Buffering is not required between residential subdivisions in conventionally zoned districts, but PUDs are required to have a minimum of 10% open space, with half of that being usable. This application does meet those requirements, and they are also proposing, as part of that, a 20-foot evergreen tree buffer along Blackman Road to act as what they call a living wall. Performance standards would not apply since this is a residential development. There wasn't much discussion on this item at the Planning Commission's meeting, the last one. The first one, there were some people that had some concerns regarding traffic and different things, but ultimately this plan was recommended to be approved by the Planning Commission by a unanimous vote. I'll be happy to answer any questions. The applicant's representative is also present.
Are there any questions for Mr. Damasi from the commissioners? Well, then I call the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners meeting in recess to hold a public hearing on this request. Public hearing is now in session. Anyone desiring to speak for or against this issue, please come forward. State your name, address, and whether you are for or against the proposed request.
Mayor and members of the commission, Randy Caldwell with Reagan Smith. I'm actually representing the applicant Goodall Homes on this project. I'm here tonight to answer any questions. Do we have the PowerPoint, Brian, or we do not? Okay, so I had a PowerPoint presented. So Doug did a great job of just explaining the plan and probably the process that we have evolved as part of this. Again, we did start with a commercial component of this in the initial neighborhood meeting. Heard a lot of concern about that from the neighbors. Decided to take that out of the mix of the development. Also, the attached product, that was another thing we heard a lot with the neighbors about concern of. We again decided to take that out of the development as well. Some of that had to do with market conditions as well. So, as Doug said, we do have some roadway improvements as part of this. Blackman Road is identified as an eventual 100-foot right-of-way, 5-lane road going through there. We will be dedicating right-of-way as part of that and making roadway improvements as well as part of that. We did do a traffic study. It's identified a left turn lane that would be required, and we're going to build that along the entire frontage. So Goodall's excited about being here in Rutherford County. They have built in Murfreesboro, but this is their first endeavor in Rutherford County, and excited about that opportunity, and we're here to answer any questions that you might have after the public hearing. Thank you.
So I would assume you're in favor of, right?
Yes, I was. I hope I am.
Okay. Is there anyone else here tonight to speak in favor of or against the proposed request? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. Rutherford County Board of Commissioners call them back into session. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve, and I would like to say that, to me, this is one of the developments that should go, went the way it should. They listened to the community. They've dedicated road right-of-way, so I move to approve.
I have a motion. Is there a second? And a second. Any questions or discussion? Without objection, all of those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, motion carries. Mr. DeMasi.
Thank you, Mayor Ketron. Second public hearing tonight is for property located along Franklin Road. This is by Mr. Jim Heisen for Land Venues Incorporated. Again, the property is zoned residential medium density, similar to the last one, and they are also asking for a planned unit development. This application was recommended also for approval by the Planning Commission back in January of 2019, this few months ago. The applicant contacted staff shortly after that meeting to discuss some possible changes. The primary change was to the road network, and if you look in your agenda packets in the report, you'll see the previous approved plan versus the plan that's before you tonight. The current plan also shows an additional 7 lots, so it's 133 units versus what was originally shown as 126. Soils for those additional lots would need to be verified through CUD, but it does appear that adequate soils are available. If for some reason, when they go through the process, if this is approved and it turns out the soils aren't there, they would just default back to the 126 that they were allowed to have to start the process. The amount of open space was reduced just slightly, but the amount still does comply with the requirements of the zoning ordinance. Again, the applicant is proposing to construct 133-unit residential development on the property. 61 of these units are single-family detached. The remaining 72 units will be a 4-unit attached product. I will call your attention as well to the pattern book that is on your iPads, along with the concept plans that you see in your planning report. Minimum lot area for the detached product would be about a little over 6,000 square feet, with some larger lots being a minimum of 7,150 square feet, which is a reduction from the previous plan. Minimum house sizes would be 2,100 square feet for the detached product and 1,400 square feet for the attached. This would also be served with a step system. There are open spaces located throughout this development, with a neighborhood center located near the front. The back portion of this property, it's about 78 or so acres, is not part of the PUD request, and the understanding of staff is that the current owner will maintain the possession to build a single-family home on the property. Again, I will call your attention to the pattern book for additional details. There are 2 access points being proposed along Franklin Road. The main entrance will align with Royal Glen Boulevard, which is directly across the street. The second will be a gated access point to the east of the attached product, which would be for emergency access only. These 2 products, the attached and the detached, as you look at the concept plan, are interconnected, so it won't be a situation where you can only get to one from one and not the other. So they are interconnected, which something we wanted and that we liked. There were several concerns regarding traffic brought up at the neighborhood meeting about this. The applicants know they have to supply a traffic study should this be approved prior to submitting preliminary plan, or along with their preliminary plan application to our department. Again, buffering is not required, although they are showing the required amount of open space, and the performance standards, again, would not apply. Most of the discussion on this item at our last Planning Commission meeting did focus on the drainage concerns in the Royal Glen subdivision and the surrounding area, possible effects to property values and traffic concerns, and also the allowable uses in a planned development, especially regarding the townhome portion. Ultimately, following discussion of the concerns, the Planning Commission did recommend approval by a vote of 10 for and 1 against. The applicant is present, and again, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. DeMasi from the commissioners? Seeing none, I'll call the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners meeting into recess to hold a public hearing on this request. The public hearing is now in session. Anyone desiring to speak for or against this issue, please come forward and state your name, address, whether you're for or against the proposal. I declare the public. You're recognized, sir.
Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Clyde Roundtree with Hillson Steel Engineering. Thank you so much for hearing our request tonight. I'm representing Mr. Jim Heisen with Land Venues as well. And as was mentioned, Doug did a great job presenting our general overview of the project. And I did want to just mention some of the things that have happened since the last time we met. We did spend some time doing some soils analysis and doing some flood analysis. Royal Glen's primary concern is any sort of migration of water from our property onto their property. Based on our studies, we can handle the 100-year flood event on our property, which is a great concern of everybody, and we're glad to say we can accommodate that concern. As far as the traffic study, there has been a traffic study completed. Right now, our recommendation from the traffic analysis is that we're going to study with the state requirements for a turn lane, and so that would be a request as we get further into the design, whether that turn lane will be necessary. But as far as the flooding, that was a primary concern, and we can handle the water that we are generating on site. We will not be changing the Royal Glens issues. I mean, the water that migrates is coming off the property basically to the west of this property, Mr. Burgess' property, and kind of going across the road there and certain storm events, but we won't be exacerbating that situation at all. So with that in mind, I'm available for any questions, and I'm definitely available after the public hearing if there's anything I can address. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else desiring to speak for or against the issue?
Thank you, Chairman, committee members. My name is Jill Ladwig. I live at 314 Royal Glen Boulevard. I am a resident there as well as an outgoing president of the HOA. I've already spoken at the other meetings on the efforts of the developers. I was at the first neighborhood meeting, the one that's done as a just to find out what the problems are or interest is. Wasn't well attended. I wasn't happy. Most people weren't happy with what was proposed. However, the developer, Jim, in my personal opinion, has absolutely done his due diligence in meeting our concerns. He's listened to every one of the issues, addressed them, recognized our displeasure. He listened, he reworked the product over and over and over. I feel I need to recognize him as a developer who's attempting to develop a community, not just a development or suburban area. Of course, the proof will be in the pudding. My interest as a resident of a 20-year-old community is pretty simple. It's to accept and, in fact, encourage new development that strives to gentrify the area, not suburbanize it, which is happening all over Murfreesboro and Rutherford County in an assaulting way. It is, in my opinion, I'm conservative, so I feel it's always better to I appreciate Jim. He's a small developer. It's better to have a bird in the hand than two in the bush, the way I look at life. I would hate for some big developer to come in and build what's happening on Veterans Highway and 10 other places I could list. His plan is respecting and celebrating the farm and equestrian lands we have in our property over there. And he's also proving that you don't have to spend more to make a better and well-thought-out product. I've only lived in mid-Tennessee since 2015, but I have been all over Rutherford County and Williamson County because it happens to be an interest of mine, and I'm disappointed in a lot of Rutherford County's development and Murfreesboro development, such as, what's going to happen over down the street from us at the Burgess Empire with a proposal of 1,900 homes. I recognize that's not the county issue, but it's my problem if we have Disneyland on Highway 96. I hope the Jim's new community will bring similar folks to who live in Royal Glen right now, who have strong shared values. We met all the time. We've consistently been concerned about the road improvement of 96, drainage, which we have seen since the last flood, where that problem is stemming from. We were concerned with price point and quality and design, and he has hand over fist, to our shock and dismay, worked with Royal Glen as far as really offering a great product. Different than what we are, that's fine, but it seems to me that it's going to be a shining element to Rutherford County, and maybe it'll be a clue as more developers come in that they need to step up their game and stop building trash, so much trash so quickly. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Is there anyone else speak in favor or against this request? Seeing no one coming forward, I declare the public hearing closed and the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners back into session. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, motion to approve with conditions.
I have a motion to approve and a second. Any questions? Without objection, all of those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, motion carries. Mr. Demasi?
Yes, Mayor Ketchum, thank you. Third request tonight is for a piece of property a little further down the road on Franklin Road. This is by Russell Marino Jr. Proposed zoning, existing zoning is residential medium density RM. Proposed zoning is commercial services. Information provided by the applicant states they would like to rezone this property to relocate a landscaping business from Williamson County. The business will focus on, and this is directly out of their application, local beautification and is similar to nearby customer services such as a neighboring landscaping, pool, and other CS businesses. The applicant is not looking to rezone this entire tract. He's only looking to do about 4.69 acres of the site. The remaining property would still remain zoned RM and may be used for a non-retail nursery in the future. That's something we'll consider when the time comes. Of course, any use of the remaining property would have to be done in conformance with our zoning regulations. The concept plan, is included with your agenda packets on your iPads. They are showing 2 access points onto Franklin Road. Franklin Road is a state road, so TDOT will have to approve any access points, be they new or revised. It also shows areas for parking, with some being paved and some being gravel. We do require a hard dustless surface for parking for customers or things like that, but if it's going to be primarily storage area, we can work with them on that. So those requirements will be verified should this be approved during the site plan review process. Commercially zoned properties are required to install a Type 2 buffer adjacent to any residentially zoned property. There wouldn't be any buffer required between this property and property right to the east of 9330 Franklin Road because it's already zoned commercial, and any outdoor storage will also have to be appropriately screened. Performance standards also would be required to be met for this application. This stretch of Franklin Road has become commercialized, more commercialized even, over the last 10 to 12 years. There's existing businesses to the east as well as an event venue just to the west, one property removed from the subject property. Franklin Road is identified as an urban-style corridor in our comprehensive plan, which also does anticipate non-residential uses. There was very little discussion on this item at the Planning Commission's meeting. Following the public hearing, the Commission did recommend approval by a unanimous vote, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Demasi from the Commissioners? Then I call the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners meeting to recess to hold a public hearing request. The public hearing is now in session. Anyone desiring to speak for or against this issue, please come forward and state your name, whether you are for or against the proposed request. Hi.
Hi, my name is Russell Marino. I am the applicant. I am, of course, for the proposal. Mr. Demasi has done a nice job reviewing what we're doing. Just wanted to come up and introduce myself, see if there are any questions about the purpose of us moving from Williamson County over to Rutherford County for our business. Thank you.
Is there anyone else desiring to speak for or against this issue? Seeing no one else coming forward, I declare the public hearing closed and the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners back into session. Do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, motion to approve with conditions.
I have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Demasi.
Yes, sir, thank you. Our next application is located along Old Nashville Highway. This is by Mr. Chance Lewis. They're asking to rezone this property from RM, residential medium density, again, to commercial services. Information provided by the applicant states they're seeking to rezone this property to relocate their current property management business located along West College Street, which is just down the road from the subject property inside the city of Murfreesboro. The applicant has submitted a concept plan, again, which has been included on your iPads for your review. The plan does show a 9,600 square foot building along with parking and storage areas. The existing house and other structures would be removed as part of the redevelopment of the property. The applicant's concept plan does show access onto Old Nashville Highway. Any new or modified driveways would require County Highway Department approval. The plan, similar to the last one we looked at, also has paved parking areas along with gravel vehicular use areas. Again, we would have to review that to see if it's primarily for a storage area, that's something we could live with. So if this is approved, we will cross that bridge during the site plan review. Commercially zoned properties, again, are required to install a Type 2 buffer adjacent to residentially zoned properties. No buffer would be required between this property and property immediately to the east, southeast-ish, as the latter is already zoned commercial services. Outdoor storage areas would also have to be appropriately screened. We would verify that through a landscape plan, again, should this application be approved, and the performance standards would apply. Most of the discussion on this item focused on historical issues of this property and the surrounding area and the old cemetery community. There were also concerns about the commercialization, of this portion of Old Nashville Highway, screening of the property, and should it be approved. Following discussion by the Planning Commission, the application was recommended approved by the Commission by a vote of 9-4, 1 against, and 1 abstention. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Demasi from the Commissioners? Seeing none, then I call the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners meeting into recess to hold a public hearing on this request. Public hearing is now in session. Anyone desiring to speak for or against this issue, please come forward, state your name and address, and whether you are for or against the proposed request. Hi, how are you?
Good evening, Commissioners. Rob Moulton, SCCN, here tonight on behalf of Chance Lewis, my applicant. I'm here to answer any questions in regards to this development and the rezoning request that we have before you tonight. Rob Moulton. Molchan, M-O-L-C-H-N. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak for or against this issue? Seeing no one coming forward, I declare the public hearing closed and the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners back into session. Do I have a motion? I have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? Without objection, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Mr. Demasi.
Yes, Mayor Ketchern, thank you. This next application, this is our fifth one. This is by Mr. Laws Bolden. This is located at the northwest intersection of Joe B. Jackson Parkway and Butler Drive. The property is currently zoned residential medium density. They are asking for a light industrial zoning for about 17 acres of this subject property. In your agenda packets, you'll see that there was a fairly lengthy paragraph taken directly from the applicant's submittal application. I'm not going to read that, as you all can kind of peruse that as I'm going through my staff report. I will say that there is a concept plan that has been attached with your agenda packets, again, on your iPads. Of course, this is not a binding plan, but it does give the Planning Commission, ultimately the Board of Commissioners, an idea on the direction that this development could take. As you can see, they're looking at the possibility of some retail, some restaurants, something like that, but also an element for self-storage. One of the reasons they asked for the light industrial zoning, just to give them a little bit more flexibility, but also the light industrial does allow for self-storage facilities by right, as opposed to the commercial zones, which would allow it only by special exception, which means even if they got the property rezoned, they would still have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a public hearing for the use of the self-storage facility. Their plan does show access access onto both Joe B. Jackson Parkway and Butler Drive. Access to these streets, should they ever be annexed into the city of Murfreesboro, would require city approval. Verification of county requirements for access and parking would be made during the site plan review process, again, should this application be approved. Light industrially zoned properties are required to install a thicker buffer adjacent to residentially zoned properties. Of the 3 levels of buffer we have, this is the thickest. This would be a type 3 buffer. So any outdoor storage, again, would also have to be appropriately screened, and the performance standards would also apply to this. Generally speaking, this application is consistent with the recommendations of the comprehensive plan. It's our opinion as staff that areas, land around the interstate interchange should be used for commercial and or industrial purposes. Most of the discussion that was raised during the public hearing were in regard to the effect of this rezoning on surrounding landowners. Another speaker had asked if this would have an effect on their property taxes should the zoning to this property be changed. Mr. Josh McCrary, the county attorney at the time, addressed the question, stated there would be no immediate impact from a change of zoning to the subject property. There were also some questions as to the difference in allowable uses in the light industrial versus commercial general zones, and then the buffering required for each zone. After discussion, the Planning Commission did recommend approval by a vote of 10-4 and 1 against. Again, I'll be happy to answer any questions, and the applicant's representative, as well as the applicant, I believe, are present.
Any questions for Mr. DeMasi from the commission? Then I call the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners meeting into recess to hold a public hearing on their request. The public hearing is now in session. Anyone desiring to speak for or against the issue, please come forward, state your name and address, and whether you are for or against the proposed request.
Hey, again, Randy Caldwell with Reagan Smith here representing Laws Bolden and Danny Wallace, the applicants on this. I learned quick, so I am for this project, obviously. But again, we stand behind the Planning Commission's vote for recommendation on this. This is a corridor that already is very industrial in character, and we think we're consistent with that with our application and also consistent with the long-range plan. So happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else desiring to speak for or against the issue? Seeing none, no one coming forward, I declare the public hearing closed and the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners back into session. Do I have a motion?
Chairman, I so move that we allow this change with the conditions set aside by the Planning Commission.
I have a motion. Is there a second? And a second. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, without objection, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, Mayor Ketron, thank you. The sixth item on our agenda tonight is a rezoning application by Mr. Robert Stroop. This is for property located along Lido Creek Road. It's currently zoned RM, and they are asking for a planned unit development as well. I will call your attention again to the concept plan that is within your agenda packets, as well as the pattern book, which is a separate item on your iPads. For a little bit of historical background, there was a preliminary plat for this subdivision, Section 1, of what was called the Views at Lido Creek, approved by the Planning Commission back in August of 2006. The property at that time was zoned R15, which is similar to what RM is today. And the master plan did show a total of 134 lots, 132 of them being for residential purposes. That plat was extended, the approval was extended several times, but eventually the applicant did let the project expire, so now it's being resubmitted as this plan development. The pattern book that I alluded to earlier for this development shows the property, again, being divided into 132 lots, along with stormwater and step lots. The minimum lot size is shown to be 10,000 square feet, and minimum home sizes would be 1,800 square feet. Houses, are proposed to be primarily vinyl sided. Sidewalks on new streets and streetlights are also proposed, along with a centralized mail kiosk and underground utilities. The plan does show a significant amount of open space, about 32 acres, which does exceed our 10% requirement. Again, I'll call your attention to the pattern book for additional details, as well as the applicant, who I believe is present. Access to this section would be from Lido Creek, for this development, the entire development, would be from Lido Creek Drive. The pattern book states that each house will have a driveway. There's a minimum of 16 feet in width, which would accommodate at least 2 cars. They have also submitted a traffic study with the application. Basically, they're going to dedicate a little bit of right-of-way, as well as some right-of-way to straighten out the intersection at Couch Road and Lido Creek toward the southern end of the property. Screening and buffering is not required for this, but there is, again, significant amount of open space, and performance standards would not apply because it's a residential development. There was discussion on the soil types and drainage of the property and the challenges that this might create for development during the Planning Commission's public hearing. Traffic improvements to Lido Creek Road were also discussed, as well as the potential street lighting that was proposed. There were also some discussion about the possible changes to the development, and I'll go over those here in just a moment. Essentially, when we looked at the original master plan, there were a lot of lots that had frontage along Lido Creek Road. There was some discussion at the Planning Commission to try to reduce that. The concept plan that has been included with the revised pattern book, which is on your iPads, shows the revised alignment. The number of lots is the same. They shifted the roads around just a little bit to be able to basically load the particular streets. They'll have, some will be double frontage, but there won't be as many loading directly onto the Lido Creek Road. So that was a win in our book. So overall, the plan that they've come up with, staff is comfortable with. With that, after discussion, the Planning Commission did recommend approval by a unanimous vote. And I'll be happy to answer any questions. Again, the applicant's representative is present.
Any questions for Mr. DeMasi from the commission? And I call the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners meeting into recess to hold a public hearing on the request. Public hearing is now in session. Anyone desiring to speak for or against the issue, please come forward and state your name and address and whether you are for or against the proposed request.
Good evening again. Rob Mulchin with SEC. I'm here in favor tonight on behalf of Mr. Stroop and his development plans moving forward. And I just want to allude to a little bit, like Doug talked about. We did go back after Planning Commission and listened to some of the comments from Planning Commission, went back and removed 10 of the lots that were fronting onto Lido Creek Road and turned them internalized to the street subdivision streets themselves. So we did reduce the amount of driveways that were actually going on to Lido Creek by over 50% from what we originally proposed on that side. So we did make that concession, and it ended up being a much better design overall for not only development but also the community at large as well. So I'm available for any comments or questions this time.
Did that change the number of lots?
No, the number of lots still stayed at 132. We were able to just shift and turn the lots around more or less. Thank you all.
Thank you. Anyone else desiring to speak for or against this issue? Just come forward and state your name and address if you're for or against the issue.
My name is Michael Shirley. I live at 5089 Lido Creek Road, and I live in a house divided. So my 8-year-old daughter is opposed to this development. She wants to not have any neighbors. We have about, 20 homes on the whole length of the road. I am unopposed to it as presented and especially as modified after our Planning Commission meeting. So I thank the applicants for listening to us at the Planning Commission meeting. Just a few things that I wanted to bring up. Drainage is still a big concern. Even after our most recent rains, it's still just a concern out there. I know that approximately 48 of the lots that are in this development are within the 100-year floodplain, and so that's a concern that they're going to have to build that land up in order to get those homes in a safe place, and I am concerned about where that water goes and who that gets pushed on. We move a lot of hay up and down the road, and so that's a concern with Lido Creek being very narrow and having no shoulders at all. And so as you all approve these neighborhoods further out into the community, is just to pay mind to that and formulating some sort of a strategy to making sure that those roads are safe. I know that we see a lot of people on roads that Lido Creek feeds into, Cedar Grove Road especially. People, if their wheel goes off those roads, they're done, and they're either in the ditch on the side or they're just stuck until somebody comes. And so that's a concern that we have. But I do appreciate the applicants as the way that it's submitted, and with curbs and gutters and sidewalks, buried utilities was really important, and I like to see that. And having an HOA, I wouldn't want to live in one, but I'm glad that they're going to be there for that neighborhood. So as long as those things are set in place, I guess you would say I would be in for this improvement overall. So thank you all for your time. One thing that I just have a a question or an ask would just be that as they make the improvements within the Lytle Creek Road, to make that as wide as they can for at least that length, because I think as time goes on, we'll see the other mile and a half to Wilson Overall Road will be developed, I would assume, and it would just be nice to have as wide as possible on Lytle Creek, just for safety reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else desiring to speak for or against this issue? Seeing no one coming forward, I declare the public hearing closed and the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners back into session. Do I have a motion? I have a motion to approve. Is there a second? And a second. Any questions or discussion? Without objection, all those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, motion carries. Mr. Demasi.
Yes, Mayor Ketron, thank you. On to our last public hearing. This is not for a rezoning. This is for an ordinance amendment. This is for amendments to Section 404A of our zoning ordinance, which is our residential zoning section, variable lot size and infrastructure in the RL zone. This was something that was initiated by staff. Just for a little bit of background, in the county unincorporated area, we have two primary single-family residential zones. We have RM, which is we've talked about quite a bit tonight, residential medium density, which generally allows 3 units per acre, and then the other is RL, which stands for residential low density, which requires 1 unit per acre, so it's a larger lot size. The boundaries, of those two zones, it's about split 50-50 roughly in the unincorporated area, was helped to be defined by our comprehensive plan, which is where we came up with the boundaries. The zoning ordinance put this provision in here anticipating the fact that we knew there would be areas within the RL, those that were 1 unit per acre minimum lot size, that we knew could handle a more dense development, be it because it had better infrastructure, it had sewer access to it, something to that effect, better water, those kind of things. So we made some provisions in the ordinance that you see on that last page of your report on your iPads. Lot size in the RL can be reduced to a 15,000 square foot, which is the minimum in the RM district, if it meets those criteria, either, well, both really, A, public sanitary sewer, or a step system, decentralized sewer system with sufficient capacity as determined by the sewer provider, and an adequate water being provided for domestic service as determined by the water provider, and also fire protection as determined by the fire chief. If a development in the RL area can meet those requirements, then we would let them build up to a 15,000 square foot as opposed to a 1 acre, so it'll give them a little more density. As you see on that chart, some of the bulk requirements, specifically lot width and lot coverage for residential uses, are different between the two zones, RM and RL. When we came up with this regulation, it was not our intent to say, yes, you can build to a 15,000 square foot lot, but you still have to build a 100-foot lot width, and that's measured at the setback line. So we were starting to run into some issues with a couple developments in the RL area due to that. So for consistency, what we said is, why don't we just change this to say, if you meet those criteria, as opposed to just being able to go down in lot width, or I'm sorry, go down in lot size, that you can just use the same bulk requirements, setbacks, lot width, lot coverage, those kind of things, as in the RM district, excuse me. So that's the regulation that we are proposing to amend, and you see that toward the bottom of that page. The only thing we're really changing, as opposed to saying lot size may be reduced to 15,000 square feet, we would say bulk regulations for the RM zone, as shown in Table 1, may be used provided, and then A and B would stay the same. So this really is just being consistent with what our intent was to begin with. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. The Planning Commission did consider this and did have a public hearing and did recommend approval by unanimous vote.
Any questions for Mr. Demasi from the Commission? Commissioner P.
Not exactly related to this particular issue, but we've all noticed that there's been a great uptick in building in the county. And I would like, when you give your monthly reports here, to get a count of how many more lots have been approved each month, and if you would, next month, maybe give that to us if the rest of the commissioners would like that information. But we see a total of dollars on the development tax, but that doesn't really break it down, and it's kind of hard to visualize looking at the dollars versus, the actual number of structures, but that could potentially be put there. But if you wouldn't mind giving that information.
Yeah, let me just make sure I understand what you're asking so I get it right. We have an available lot inventory that we do provide to the Public Works Department, which has the different subdivisions, how many lots are available in total each month. Is that kind of what along those lines?
It is, and it kind of gives us an idea of what's going on in our schools too. We might potentially start seeing more growth, and we're definitely seeing more growth. I hadn't seen this much movement since I was on Planning Commission, and it's been about 8 years. So,
yeah, we can gladly provide that.
Any other questions for Mr. DeMasi? It appears that the spring thaw has occurred. Yes, sir, Mr. Percy. Piercy.
Explain to me, of course, I'm.
You can hold your mic up.
Why would we want to do this? To make it more dense?
Well, the regulation as far as the number of units is concerned, that's not changing. The reason we had that provision in there, again, is because we realized that even in areas that were zoned for 1 unit per acre, we knew there would be pockets in there. We even discussed that during the comprehensive plan and even during the formation of the zoning ordinance, that we knew, especially around the borders between RM and RL, there would probably be some RL zone property that met the criteria of the RM zone. As opposed to making them go back and rezone the property, we just thought it made more sense to say, okay, if you meet these certain criteria in the RL zone, you can build to RM density. So that's already, that's there. This wouldn't change that. All this is saying is you'd be able to use the same lot width and lot coverage as existing developments in the RM would allow. As far as the density goes, that's not changing. That's already in existence.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Okay, seeing none, I will now call the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners meeting into recess to hold a public hearing on this request. Public hearing is now in session. Anyone desiring to speak for or against the issue, please come forward and state your name and address, whether you're for or against the proposed request. Seeing no one coming forward, I declare the public hearing closed and the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners back into session. Do I have a motion? Commissioner Phillips.
Mayor Ketron, I move that we approve the amendment to Section 404A of the Rutherford County zoning ordinance.
I have a motion. Is there a second? I have a second. Any questions or discussion? Without objection, all of those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Now, members, we're on to item M on the...
Mayor Ketron.
Yes. Commissioner.
Before Doug DeMasi leaves, we have just approved 461 new lots. That's in 1 month, and it's not where we were back 10 years ago, but by this time next year we will be exceeding that growth rate. We just heard a gentleman talk about infrastructure, and if we're not all concerned about that comment that citizen made, we ought to be. Our planning department, along with our planning commission, about 3 years ago undertook a study for about a year that dealt with an overlay system and traffic sheds. And that overlay system and traffic sheds did not make it to this commission to make a decision on. I'd like to make a motion that this commission direct the Planning Commission to revisit that overlay traffic shed study when any development, residential development, occurs, that overlay system be added to show the impact of that development to that particular infrastructure and that area of our county, and report back to this commission within 6 months with a recommendation positive or negative, but I'd like to see that recommendation come before this commission so that we could take a look at it.
You've heard the motion. Is there a second on the motion? And a second? Discussion.
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd. Got you next, Commissioner Gurney. Commissioner Dodd.
I have some limited awareness of this type of a study. I'll be voting no on this motion. I'm voting no because my awareness of this methodology in other counties does not stop development, does not stop more houses and loading roads, but it does not allow for any type of a method to fund the roads improvements. So I think this has a negative impact on development, but not a positive impact on improving our infrastructure. And I know we at Public Works have begun a dialogue that's going to be on our agenda, I think, monthly on this topic from Public Works with the Highway Department, Engineering and Planning departments to start seeking a way to improve roads with developer participation, with engineering participation, again, highway planning and engineering. So this is a significant issue. I believe we need to improve roads. I believe there are other methods than a traffic shed, which will have a negative, which will not physically improve the roads. It'll simply change density, in my opinion.
Commissioner Gurley.
Yes, I'm also opposed to this. There's a very good example. Williamson County has had this going for quite some time. If you drive down Rocky Fork Road in my district, all the way to the county line, it's a pretty nice road on Rocky Fork. When you hit the Williamson County line, it's potholes and depressions, and you wonder if you're going to get to Nolensville without tearing your car up. They have traffic shed. As Commissioner Dodd pointed out, it does nothing for the funding. There's plenty of development along Rocky Fork Road from the county line to Nolensville. But in general, my observance has been that the turn lanes are shorter, they're poorer done, and in general, I think that's true over a good portion of Williamson County. It's done nothing except cost the county more. The software and so on to implement this is costly. I think a more common sense approach would be for the Planning Commission to work with the developers. As the development that was approved in my district just a few moments ago, where the developer set aside 50-foot right-of-way along the length of their development. That's what we need to be pushing the developers to do, so that we have the right-of-way and we try to improve the roads. The only thing the traffic shed thing is going to do is cost us money, and there's no mechanism for paying for the roads. And in general, drive over in Williamson County, drive along Rocky Fork, look at what Rocky Fork Road is like in Rutherford County, and then look at what Rocky Fork Road is like in Williamson County. Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Phillips.
Just one follow-up. My motion was to get us off of our butts and start doing something. And there's a number of us that have been talking about it for years, and we're still not doing anything. The overlay system that I'm talking about would be put in place, and if the road system is not adequate to support a 200-unit development, it would let them know how many units that road would allow. Don't have to make in road improvements, but it would say, no, that road system will not support 200 homes. It might support 100, might support 50. That's what that would do. I'm not aware, or wasn't aware of the Public Works looking at that, looking at and addressing this problem, and if they are, I will be happy to remove my motion and allow the Public Works Department, the Public Works Committee to do work and due diligence. And if that is the case, I'll remove my motion and allow that committee system to work.
Chairman? Chairman Cush, Public Works.
Thank you, Chairman. And Jeff, or Chairman Phillips, we at the Public Works Committee recently tasked ourselves with Greg Brooks, our road superintendent, to have a monthly discussion to chat about this. So this is a brand new undertaking. But I would suggest that we do not abandon your idea in planning, because for a couple of reasons. One, planning members need continuing education credits. So bringing in experts to chat about road improvements and the traffic shed and other tools like that. I know you're not hanging this motion entirely on a traffic shed study, but other tools like that. Bringing in experts like that helps the members of the Planning Committee get our continuing education credits. So for that reason, one reason, I would like to keep that in planning and keep your motion alive. Two is Public Works and Planning will look at this a little bit differently. Public Works is going to look at it on how we're going to build those roads and how Greg's group is going to participate, or how we can partner with developers with some monies to improve those roads in front of those developments. Now, what we need to understand first is what hammer do we have to engage with developers to have them participate financially. The state, as we've been told for many, many years, limits us as a county commission by implementing certain development taxes and so forth. So we need to clearly understand, and Nick, this may be a job for you, we need to clearly understand what the state will allow us to do in terms of, do we create some kind of an extra development tax to help pay for roads and transportation? So we have to know first legally what we can do. That would be my first opinion. And then secondly, we can't depend on the road superintendent long term and his budget to build all of our roads. We're going to have participation, to my opinion, from developers. If they want to build a nice big subdivision, they're going to have to participate in some money up front to help improve those roads to get to that development. But we got to see what we can and can't do first. So, Jeff, I would suggest you keep your motion on the table and maybe clarify it just slightly to not solely pin it on the traffic shed study, because I think these two gentlemen are right to a certain point, but you're also correct in what the traffic study does as well. But that's just one piece of the puzzle. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope that.
Other comments? Commissioner Phillips.
Just follow up with that. I may have jumped the gun, and I apologize if I've done that. But what if I removed the motion and allowed the planning director or the planning commission through our planning director to have a conversation with our Public Works Committee about that traffic shed study that we did and what it was made of and how it could impact the county, and have that committee report back to the commission as to what they found out. If they will do that, I'll be more than happy to withdraw that motion so that we can have a better understanding of what we're actually talking about as far as improving the infrastructure on the county. So if the chairman of that committee will agree to do that, I will remove my motion and allow that committee process to work, and then come back and make some type of recommendation or no recommendation before the commission.
Commissioner Cush.
Thank you, Jeff. The common denominator is Doug DeMasi, who resides in our Public Works Department as well as our planning. And the second common denominator is myself as Public Works Chairman and Vice Chair of Planning Commission. So that makes perfect sense.
Okay. So Commissioner Phillips removes his motion. Commissioner P., do you remove the second?
Before I say yes, I want to remove it. I want to make a comment on why I second it. We've been piecemeal for years on what we do out of planning. You know, there's some developments, as Commissioner Gurley mentioned, did a really good job. They gave the right-of-way through there. And we need to look at requiring that kind of thing. When we see that a development is going to cause more traffic in a specific area, and we're going to have to develop those roads, we need to be looking long range. And to do that, we're going to need some kind of study, because we're out here blind right now. You know, there's places where we could request, and most times these developers recognize the need for giving up the right-of-way so the road can be expanded, because that's amenities that the people that are going to live in those proposed areas will want. But we can't do this blindly, and we can't do it piecemeal, and I'm ready to see us move in that direction. It sounds like our Public Works is headed that direction, so I will withdraw it.
Motion and a second is withdrawn. Commissioner Cush?
Further discussion. Before I forget, Chairman Ketron, if I may task you, if you don't mind, with your background from the Senate, if you might help Nick put together and help us understand legally what the state will allow us to do in terms of taxation or fees for development, okay? We need to know exactly what we can and can't do before we start to implement anything. But Commissioner P., we can grant right-of-ways all day long, but until we have the funds to then expand the roadways to involve those right-of-ways, we're still in the same boat we've been in all these years. So we are tired, the Planning Commission, we are so tired, and the communities are so tired of the traffic in this county. When we approve a large development, whether it's got it, we tack on a turn lane, which is fine, but that's a Band-Aid. Until we can get proper roads to that development, that's the trouble. Because you know what happens when we get a big development, then soon comes the convenience store or the supermarket, and then all of a sudden the school comes up, and we have a lack of infrastructure connection to all these places. So we are getting there. We have asked Doug, we have asked the school board to let's start communicating on what their long-range plans are. Let's pinpoint on a big map where we're going, where the school boards are going, so we can start not just having people tell us we're going to build there and expect us, the citizens, to get out our wallet every year on taxes and try and fund a road out there. That's the wrong way to do that. We need to get ahead of it. So this is all in motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Cush. In the Mayor's office and General Counsel, we will we'll work on that and be prepared to give you a report at your next Public Works Committee meeting. And then I think the task is being requested to the Planning Commission. We have several members on Planning Commission, as we have regular citizens on that committee as well. So start that in motion, and if we don't get a report back, Mr. Phillips, then I think it'd be appropriate to come back with your motion at that point in time. But we'll let this try to work its way through and see what we can get done from there. Okay? Is everybody good? Okay, we're on members on the agenda. Your agenda in front of you, reports by standing committees. We have Budget, Finance, and Investment Committee. Chairman P., you're recognized.
Just so I know, how many commissioners on the Insurance Committee? I know Commissioner Allen is. and there are several other, two more. I want to thank all of y'all, and not just you, but also the citizens that serve and the other county employees that serve on this important committee. Tonight, basically, that's what we're looking at in budget, is reviewing what they've done, and the first 6 items at least are all related to insurance. And the first resolution is M1A, related to the health insurance. Whereas in an effort to generate sufficient revenue to cover the claims cost in the Employment Insurance Fund recommended were presented to the Risk Management Committee for consideration as the health insurance premium rates for the active employees and retirees effective January 1st, 2020. And whereas the Risk Management Committee recommendation was approved by the Budget and Finance and Investment Committee for consideration to the County Commission, therefore be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the schedules attached hereto Exhibit 1 and incorporated herein by reference, as if set forth herein at length verbatim, be adopted as the health insurance premium rates for the active employees and retirees effective January 1st, 2020. Resolved this 11th day of April, 2019. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Commissioner P. moves the resolution. Is there a second? Have a second. Any questions or discussion? Members, we're on the board. If you would, please cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and
Board to
wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change their vote, they may do so now.
Board to vote.
19 yes, motion passes. One abstain, one abstain.
Commissioner P.
Item N1B, and this is the dental plan. Whereas in order to ensure the solvency of the dental plan, the future claims of the plan have been estimated, and whereas increases of 1% for the PPO plans and 4% for the DHMO plan in the plan premiums for the 2020 year are needed. Therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the premium rates for the dental plans are adopted for the 2020 calendar year according to the schedules attached hereto as Exhibit 1 and incorporated herein by reference as set forth herein at length verbatim. Resolved this 11th day of April 2019. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Have a motion. Is there a second? And a second. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, we're on the board. Please cast your vote.
Anyone
Board to
that,
vote.
anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Board to vote.
20 yes, motion passes.
Item C.
Item M1C, whereas the premium rates per month for vision coverage for calendar year 2020 to be 100% employee paid are as follows, with a 1% increase from the prior year. And this is broken down into 12-month and 10-month due to the fact some of our employees which teach are on a 10-month basis, and of course the others in the general are on 12-month. For an individual, that cost would be $7.47 for 12-month, $8.97 for 10-month. Employee spouse, $15.70 for 12, and $18.83 for the 10-month. Employee and child for 12-month is $13.84, and for 10-month is $16.60. Employee and families for 12-month is $21.68, and for 10-month is $26.02. Therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the vision coverage premium rates are adopted as outlined in the foregoing resolution for the 2020 calendar year. Resolved this 11th day of April 2019. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
I have a motion. Is there a second? And a second. Any questions or discussion? Please cast your vote. Commissioner Gammon.
I just want the record to show I'm going to declare Rule 10 on these.
Duly noted. Commissioner declares Rule 10. Cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
20 yes, 1 abstain, motion passes.
Item D.
Item M1D, whereas the current stop-loss coverage on Rutherford County's medical plan is $750,000 per covered member, and whereas Cigna has proposed to renew the stop-loss coverage at the same pooling level with a monthly rate of $7.95 per employee, with a total annual premium of $541,205.34. Therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the county mayor be and is herein authorized to execute all required documents for and on behalf of Rutherford County to renew the stop-loss coverage on Rutherford County's medical plan, with the pooling level to remain at the same at $750,000 per covered member, with a monthly rate of $7.95 per employee, and a total annual premium of $541,205.34 effective July 1st, 2019. Resolved this 11th day of April, 2019. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Have a motion. Is there a second? Second. Any questions or discussion? Commissioner Gammons.
I'm going to have to declare Rule 10 on this one as well.
Commissioner Gammons declares Rule 10. Anybody else? Members, cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote or wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Board to vote.
20 yes, 1 abstain, motion passes.
Item M1E, whereas quotes are requested for short-term and long-term disability insurance covers for employees, and where it is being proposed to award the short-term and long-term disability insurance coverage to Cigna effective January 1st, 2020. Therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the county mayor be and is hereby authorized to execute all necessary documents for on behalf of Rutherford County, Tennessee, to award the short-term and long-term disability insurance coverage to Cigna effective January 1st, 2020. At the rates attached hereto, Exhibit 1, and incorporated herein by reference as if set forth herein at length verbatim. Resolved this 11th day of April, 2019. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Have a motion. Is there a second? And a second. Questions or discussion? Commissioner Gammon declares Rule 10. Members, cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Board to vote.
20 yes, 1 abstain, motion passes.
Item M1F, whereas quotes were requested for basic and voluntary life insurance coverage for employees and dependents, and whereas it is being proposed to award the basic and voluntary life insurance coverage to the standard effective January 1st, 2020. Therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the county mayor be and is hereby authorized to execute all necessary documents for and on behalf of Rutherford County, Tennessee, to award the basic and voluntary life insurance coverage to the standard effective January 1st, 2020, at the rates attached hereto as Exhibit 1 and incorporated herein by reference as if set forth herein at length verbatim. Resolved this 11th day of April, 2019. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Have a motion. Is there a second? And a second. Questions or discussion? Commissioner Gammon declares Rule 10.
Yes, this will be my last Rule 10.
Thank you. Commissioner Cook.
Does this have, I don't know how to say it. Does this have age limits on this life insurance?
Commissioner, I don't know that I can answer that.
Because the one we have had, it has age limit.
Yes.
And I don't think it's right to have an age limit on the life insurance. You pay for it 20 years, and then all of a sudden you reach a certain age and they start cutting it.
I can't disagree with your logic there, but I'm not able to answer that for you. If you want to suspend the rules, we can ask our director to come up and maybe he can explain that for us. So,
I've moved to suspend the rules.
Have a motion to suspend the rules and a second. All in favor of consent to suspend the rules, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. So we have our new Director of Risk Management and Insurance coming forward, Mr. Elam and Ms. Lois Miller. Ms. Miller is still, we're still in training, but I'll turn it over to either one of y'all to answer the question. Ms. Miller.
Commissioner Cook, this life insurance does indeed include the age limitations. It's term life insurance. That's standard for all term life products. And this is a renewal of the existing insurance that we have in place, and the age limitations and reductions do apply. Yes, it does.
Yes, we haven't changed anything from the prior insurance.
Can this be changed? Is there, I know you said there wasn't one, but is there one out there that does not?
Not on a term life basis. There are products out there that you could buy individually that are available to cover end-of-life expenses, but that's not at all what this product is.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. We'll come back into session. Mr. P., you're recognized.
hey, item M1F. Excuse me. I need to flip the page since I believe have we voted on that? I believe.
I don't think we voted.
No. Have not voted on that.
We've got the motion and second.
We have a motion and a second. Questions or discussions? Any further questions or discussions? You're on the board. Cast your vote, members. Your no button not working.
Like it's froze up.
Right. Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
19 yes, 1 no, 1 abstain. Motion passes.
Okay, our last resolution on the budget tonight is item M1G, and this is actually to acquire some property to the property we just voted on last commission meeting to get a alternate exit and entrance into the school. Whereas in March 2019, the acquisition of property located on Highway 231 North on Jefferson Pike near Walter Hill Elementary School was approved for purchase for future schools. And whereas the Rutherford County Board of Education desires to purchase approximately 2 7/500 acres from Sanford Campbell and Dolores Campbell, which adjoins the aforementioned property, to provide a 100-foot right-of-way with a secondary access point road to the school site from Holly Grove Road at a purchase price of $42,500 per acre. And whereas the right-of-way property shall remain a private road for the use of the future schools. Therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the purchase of the right-of-way property for a private road be approved, and further that the county mayor and all appropriate officials of Rutherford County, Tennessee be and are hereby authorized to execute the necessary purchase contract and closing documents to acquire the property. Resolved this 11th day of April, 2019. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion, questions? Mr. Gurley?
I'd just like to make a comment. I made an amendment during committee to the original resolution. That's the reason for the portion in here about the private road, because I didn't really think it was right for us to build a road that the landowner could benefit from and build houses along. So therefore, it will remain a private road. Had the landowner wanted to donate the property or something, then that would have been another consideration. But since they're receiving just compensation for it, I just don't think it's right for us to build roads for developers.
Other questions? Commissioner Piercy.
During the budget meeting the other night, I questioned if there was any legal aspect of building this road to come out on Holly Grove without giving public notice of it being done or anything, and someone was going to check. Was it checked?
To my knowledge, there's not a problem with that, Mr. Piercy.
Back 4 or 5 years ago, there was an issue with a business out there with a lot of trucks traveling out on the road, and his business was shut down, so I didn't know if they should have been addressed or whatever. My other question, on the drawing that the school showed us for this road, it appeared that the road had been shoved way over to the adjacent property line. Is there some reason that road could not be back on the opposite property line so it would not be encroaching on the man that lives next door? Since he's getting no benefit from this road whatsoever, it looks like they have shoved it over to his property line. Could it not be moved back over to the property line of on the other side?
We could probably go into recess and hear from someone from the school board that's here. I can't answer that question. Do I hear a motion? I'm sorry. Okay.
If you're the only representative and you don't feel, I'm afraid we don't have anyone here right now, and we can suspend the rules to answer that.
Or you can defer action until next month.
So where do we go from there? If we have a question, it can't be answered.
Well, then
we defer it to next month?
I would recommend deferring to next month if you can't answer that question.
I'll make the motion to defer it to next month till my question can be answered.
I had a motion and a second. Any discussion? Further discussion?
Quick question is, are there options on that property that would allow us to do that? We need to be a little careful and make sure that there's not an option that expires or something before we can defer that. What if the option expires within that 30 days? We might lose the opportunity to purchase that land. I think we need to be careful about that.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
Just a thought. Why don't we defer this to later in this meeting and have Mr. Sandvik contact someone to see if they can get an answer for us. If they can't, then I see nothing else we could do but say defer for another month. Right. But I prefer not to do that if we may lose this property. If Mr. Sandvik would agree to make a phone call and see if he can get in touch with someone to answer that question for us.
Move to table this item till further in the meeting.
I have a motion to table this motion. Is there a second? And a second. Ms. Sandvik?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think a motion to table is appropriate under our rules.
All right. And what do you suggest then, Mr. Chairman?
I believe the chairman could just without objection push it to the end of the meeting or something to that effect. But if you read our rules, it says no motions to table.
You're probably right. Let's you can roll. You can request a roll to the end of the calendar and be at the last item on the agenda. Commissioner McAdoo. I'm sorry.
Bring it up on the other business.
Yeah, we can roll to the end of the agenda before we get to other business.
Okay, do we need a motion on that, or are we good?
No, we'll just roll it to the end without objection. We'll roll it to the end of the calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing I want to mention before I sit down here, on your desk you'll see a packet. It's got a stapled together, pretty thick there. But what this is some information that we presented at budget, and we've decided that we'll be doing a performance evaluation yearly on the budget director through budget and finance, which all 21 commissioners will actually be doing this. And we haven't set exactly the questions that will be asked, but this packet has got some information where I reached out to CTAS. Mr. Doug Beaudry, who's our representative for this area, gave me the first one that you'll run into. Also, I talked to our HR director, and she also gave me some information of different business organizations and how they provide evaluations. But anyway, that's for your reading entertainment.
Okay. Well, Mr. Sandvik's making a phone call, so we'll move on the agenda to the Health and Education Committee. There's no report. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to wait and bring that up, your announcement under statements and announcements at the end, but no report from Health and Education Committee tonight. Is that correct? Okay. Property Management Committee, no report. Now I'll call on Chairman Pettis Reed for Public Safety Committee.
Commissioners, you will notice there are two resolutions from Public Safety, and I'll begin with the first one. I'll read the resolution, and then if you have questions, we'll deal with those. Whereas it is in the best interest and safety of the citizens of Rutherford County, Tennessee, that an upgraded communication system for public safety be developed and established. Now therefore be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners to approve the Motorola P25 radio system for communications contingent upon a memorandum of understanding with the City of Murfreesboro to use the local government system. Be it further resolved, the appropriate officials shall proceed to get optional prices for additional sites that can be included in the cost of the system. Resolved this 11th day of April 2019. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? Commissioner Gerling.
First of all, I second this, so I'm very much for it. It's probably long overdue. I would like to make a few comments that what we're voting on tonight, we don't know the exact cost. Probably somewhere between 16 to 18 or so $1 million. We just don't know that right now. So what you're voting on is to move forward with this for us to enter into a memorandum of understanding, the governance, who's going to control what, who's going to pay for what with the City of Murfreesboro. And that is, our due diligence will get done. We're also looking at potential design options. I would also mention that there's probably things that are not accounted for in Motorola's proposal, such as civil work and so on at sites, to make sure that they're capable of handling what we're putting in, that may wind up getting added to this. That's just part of doing it. You've got to have facilities to do this. I would encourage, I brought this up at the committee and in the very first meeting, and I didn't get very far with it, but I'd like to propose that we also consider giving, with a separate motion after this, that we give the mayor authority to hire some help to review this. I don't know of any project, when we undertook the judicial building, we spent a lot of money on engineering services. There's several of you in here that are engineering orientated. It's part of, anytime we build a school, 3-point-something% of the budget for that school is engineering services, to make sure it's built right, it's designed right. This is just as complicated, if not more so, than a building. There are probably more people out there that know how to build a building than know how to build a radio system. And so I would just ask that you consider that after we vote to move forward on this, which I think is a great thing for our county. It's long overdue, that we give the mayor the tools that he needs in order to properly evaluate this. I think that's what we can do for our citizens to make sure that we get the most bang for the buck, and that we negotiate just as you would for a car or anything else. You negotiate for the best possible price, and you want to make sure that you get all the features that you want on this. So thank you for your consideration.
Commissioner Dunn.
Commissioner Gurley, this seems like something that will go through to budget before it comes to resolution. So you may have explained it and I didn't pick up on it. When will we see the cost, and will we have an opportunity to vote yea or nay on the cost?
Mr. Gurley.
I think once we make this motion and get this thing moving, we'll see Motorola developing. They're already working on developing a cost. That cost will be, as expressed in the thing, for 2 different options, as possibly adding additional sites to their original proposal, as well as what they originally proposed. And I think most of the commissioners, or if not all commissioners, got a copy of that proposal. And so they will be developing that once we move forward. I'm sure they're already developing that, but if they're not, they'll be moving full steam ahead, and yes, it will have to go to budget. It'll probably come back to public safety and then to budget.
What was the vote on this in public safety? Was it unanimous?
Yes, I think, but you can expect that this cost is going to be somewhere between probably 16 and 18 or 19 million dollars, depending on everything. And so that's the size of a budget item that we're talking about.
Commissioner, let me say that you had a unanimous vote from the public safety when we got to this. What we spent was 2 meetings in particular dealing with what type of system we want to look at. There was 2 different types, and what would give the best coverage for Rutherford County. In other words, what would, say, a sheriff's deputy out here outside of his car be able to hear and transmit, and where? And what we voted on was something that would give at least guaranteed 95% coverage all over Rutherford County. And all of us that are commissioners know that in the past years, we haven't had anywhere near that. And if you've ever did a ride-along in the ambulance or any of these, you know we haven't had that. So that's what we're trying to do, is provide a system that works for our ambulance service, for our EMTs, for emergency rescue, and especially our sheriff's department. And that's what this system is, what we're talking about. What you're basically doing with this resolution right here is giving the go-ahead to get some pricing. If you'll notice, it mentions in there looking at other sites, additional sites. Those sites are for the antenna work. We're talking about like 12, isn't that right now? Is what we're looking at. We're looking at some new spots around the county. I think the first mount, we've got several different varieties. I've got a whole book of showing you where these are located. But this is what they looked at. We spent a pretty good bit of time going through this. So what we're primarily asking for right now, give us the opportunity to work with Motorola to give us their best shot. In other words, they can give us several different types of pricing. It doesn't mean that we accept those whatsoever. It just means that there are offers of what's out there and where we go from there.
Other question? Commissioner Rather.
I'm certainly in favor of this. I've been out on Burke's Hollow Road at 2 o'clock in the morning with Rutherford County and Cannon County, fixing to go up Hippie Hill. I honestly thought I'd never come back. Was worried about that. And we had no radio communication, nor cell phone communication. There was another incident where a couple deputies, it was actually a FTO and a new deputy. I can't remember where they were, but they went hands-on and got in a fight. And the seasoned deputy, the FTO, was hollering 1082 over the radio, which means I need help, but he wasn't getting out. Nobody heard him. Fortunately, I did come back, and that deputy took things under control. So I certainly think it is long overdue. I agree with that. I just wanted to put a thought out there. Maybe you already considered this, and that may be in the coming process. If Motorola, could we trade in what we have, give it to Motorola, and see if we can't get a little money shaved off? That may have already been talked about, but I just thought I'd present that.
Yeah. Commissioner P.
I can probably answer at least part of that. The short answer is probably no, but the plan is to retain the system that we currently have and the radios that we have. For instance, in the volunteer fire departments and in our fire department, those radios will be used to contact each other on the fire ground, also in contact with deputies and EMS if they're needed. So those radios will be utilized still, and the current equipment and repeaters. So all that still will remain in use. So there wouldn't be a need to trade it in.
Other discussion, comments? Commissioner Allen.
I just have a question that's a follow-up, I guess, to Commissioner Dodds, and that is, when we get the pricing workup from Motorola, is that going to include that consulting piece? Will we know what that price is? I think that might have been part of the question, was what's that cost and who's going to work that cost up?
Commissioner Gurley.
The consulting would not be included in the Motorola thing because that's their proposal. My proposal is to allow the mayor, and I don't want to include it in this vote, but to allow the mayor to hire some consulting expertise to look at the proposal and review it, just like you would on any other project. You would have an outside engineering firm separate and aside from the contractor. You wouldn't be having the contractor tell you what to do. I don't know that we know that. I think just to review the proposal and relying on Motorola to do it, it should not be more than a few $1,000s. But it's probably money well spent because, like I said, we need to look and make sure that our tax dollars are accounted for properly, and So I'll leave it up to the commission as far as that. I'm not going to include that in this. I want us to vote a positive vote on this and get this project moving forward.
Mr. Chairman, we have, I believe the Motorola rep is here if he would like to talk. I've been acknowledged. Could we go into recess? Is there a motion to go into recess to let the gentleman talk? Got a motion? Is there a second? Yes, sir. Please come forward. If you would, for the record, just identify yourself.
My name is Alex Sherman. I'm rep with Motorola. So to answer Commissioner P's question on the trade-in, yes, there will be a trade-in for radios that are currently used and will not be reused. So that will be part of the proposal. What was the other question?
Other questions? There's no other questions, other than you're going to give us good money for the trade-ins, aren't you? All right.
Of course. Of course.
Are we on the record? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Commissioner Phillips.
In your opinion, why would we, if we're entering a joint agreement with the city of Murfreesboro, why would we pay for a consultant to come in, look at your proposal, and make a determination whether it's in our best interest or not? I'm not 100% sure that I would be willing to support spending thousands of dollars for an engineer, some engineer to come in and look at your proposal when we're entering an agreement with the city of Murfreesboro. What benefit could the county get from doing that?
I don't know about the benefits of it. I used to be an engineer, so I've actually reviewed this proposal as well. I have full faith in our engineering firm. That's what we do. We design systems all over the world. We guarantee our coverage. We stand behind all of our products. To pay for a consulting firm, I view Motorola as your consultant. We are your partner. This is why, this is our business. We help public safety day in and day out. That's what we do. A consultant in past experiences has slowed down the process drastically. I know the current shape of the system is in need of repair and replace. Consultants typically in the past have been very expensive, and they drastically slow down the process. So to answer your question, not much benefit from my end. Motorola is your consultant. That's what we've proposed. The system that we've laid out before you is a fantastic system. It does exactly what you need, and it's going to get the county into the 21st century on the radio needs and keep everybody safe.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Rather.
Is there a possibility that once we have better idea of the numbers, dollars and cents, that before Rutherford County makes a commitment, that we could have a period of time to test this, to see what the people that are actually using it, how they like it, what the quirks are, what they don't like about it, or whatever? Is there a way to do that where we can, for a few months, a few guys at the sheriff's office, a few guys in fire and rescue, that we can put that to the test in real world?
You're saying the current system, the current Murfreesboro, the current local system, or after it's built out?
Well, I'm talking about the new system.
Sure.
Now, I understand it's not just radios, correct? Or is it just the radios?
It's dispatch and radio.
Okay. I don't know if it can be done because of what has to happen in dispatch, correct? So I don't know that to be a fact. It seems like it may not be possible, but I at least wanted to ask the question, is there a way before the county makes a commit to that much money if there was any way that the boots on the ground out there could test this for a few months and come back with feedback before we, spend having
Sure.
every meeting at all.
So I know Peter Rogers, many of you may know, he's done a lot of testing, be it informal testing. We would be happy to perform a coverage test of the existing system to verify its results. The city of Murfreesboro has already done that with their current 7800 trunk system. It passed with flying colors. So I guess to answer your question, until you have final sign-off of your system, you have full say on what you would like to change or not change with it. So when you enter an agreement with that into the contract, until you sign that final sign-off, you have ultimate say of what you do and don't like, the quirks, everything will be ironed out before you do actually sign the final sign-off. So to answer your question, when the local government system does go live, we would be happy if it's okay to allow radios on there and have people test. I know quite a few people have heard the system right now, and you can talk out in Reedyville right now on the 4-site system, and we're proposing a 10 or 12-site system. So to answer your question, yes.
Commissioner Gurley.
Yes, well, I think you would agree, Alex, and we've talked a lot, and there's no way to test a system that we're buying until after it's built.
Correct.
Because we're, only 4 of Murfreesboro's 5 sites are on the air at the present time. There's still a 5th site to go on the air. So the Murfreesboro system hasn't really fully been tested. What we're proposing to do is add anywhere from 5 to 7 additional sites to Murfreesboro's system, which will expand the footprint and the coverage outside of the core area of Murfreesboro into those places like Milton and Eagleville and Smyrna area and all those areas that are not covered fully by Murfreesboro's system. So there's no way to do that until we bring those up on the air. What I will say that there will be in this contract, and there's that there will be a period of testing, and I know from previous experience with Motorola will guarantee their product, and we will test and test and test until we're satisfied with it. And we would expect, with the good engineering that Motorola has, that would not require any changes. And so I fully expect, once we decide exactly where we want to go, and Motorola gives us all this, that we'll have a system that will perform.
It's my understanding that it's not just equipment and dispatch, it's also towers, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's either 10 or 12 towers, and you're looking at probably $1 million per tower on those sites. So that is what provides the coverage in those areas that you can't get picked up, like where you were describing, Commissioner.
Correct. And I guess what Commissioner Gurley's referring to is, yes, any coverage that if we show you a map and it says that 95% of the area of the county is covered, we will test to that 95%. And if it does not meet it, it is on us to provide another tower or a mediation factor to get to that 95%. That is our guarantee. So when you sign that and say it doesn't come to 95%, it's on us. We build another site. You don't have to worry about it. That's part of the coverage guarantee. So to Mayor Ketchman's point, yes, the 10-site design, we've actually designed it so that it uses existing towers. So what that means is it's a quicker turnaround time to build out. They're county-owned towers at this point, and it would actually require no building of additional towers. So the 12-site design that Commissioner Gurley is referring to actually adds 2 more green sites, and by green, it means it's a grass lot right now. It adds 2 green sites to the design. So that incurs the cost to Mayor Ketchum's point of about that monetary amount. Sir.
Commissioner Piercy.
You keep referring back to 95% of the county.
Correct.
Can 100% of the county not be covered?
It's a matter of statistics. It's impossible to technically cover every facet of the county in statistics. So without getting very, very technical, down in, you have your hills and valleys and your hollers. When you get down into a valley, there's points that you would actually have to put a tower in the valley to cover that valley. So it's a kind of a diminishing cost of where you would need 30, 40 tower sites to actually get 100% coverage.
Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner P.
Well, having been on the end of a radio, hitting that key and trying to talk to somebody and it not getting out, I'm really well aware, at least in the Readable area, of where those white spots are. And I told these folks, I said, I've heard this song and dance is every time I've helped fund another tower that my dead spots would get covered. And I told the guys that were questioning me, it wasn't Motorola, but I said, I'm not going to spend a penny until I know that this is going to work for my area. I'm tired of this, giving money out, and it's still being dead spots here. So what I'm telling all of you, I can give you the contact information, but Peter came out and he had a portable radio. Now, we're not talking about a car with a big whip. You've got that and you get better coverage, but when you're out standing and you've got a handheld, that's that 95% coverage that we're talking about. And when you're in the basement of some concrete filled buildings, you're not going to get coverage. When you're in some of our schools, you may not get coverage unless there's antennas run in there. And by state law, any future buildings that have schools in them will have to have this built into the infrastructure on the front end. Doing this on the back end is really costly, just so you know, and that's where part of this white stuff is coming from. However, I did go for a ride in Readable and up Cripple Creek and on up toward Burks Hollow, just to let you know. And yeah, we still got some dead spots, but this system worked a lot better than their current system with the repeaters in place like they are now. Once they make a change, I would look for some improvement, but it is better than what we currently have. So I would advise any of you that are curious about this to call, and I promise you there'll be somebody take you out and show you the coverage you've got in your areas or wherever you're interested in.
Okay, Commissioner Gurley.
Yeah, to answer Commissioner Piercy's question, that was one of the reasons I made the amendment to this resolution in public safety. Is Motorola is actively, and I received some information, and so did Commissioner Reed today, is actively looking at the additional sites, and the final design is not 100% yet. Those sites are being looked at, and so while it may not be possible to cover 100%, we may be able to cover more than the 95%. It will take additional expenditures. 3 out of the 5 sites that were mentioned we own. 2 of them are leased. They're shared with Middle Tennessee Electric. The Long Ridge and the Smyrna site are leased sites. The county owns Lynch Hill, Milton, and the new Eagleville Tower. But those are still being looked at. We need to let Motorola do their job, provide us with that thing, and then we come back at budget and to say, if it's $16 million with 10 sites, do we want to spend another $3 million to add 2 more sites to it? Or what do we want to spend? How much money do we want to spend? But let's get forward moving with it and get on the ball and get something going.
To your point, Mr. Gurley, we've actually completed our coverage designs for the 10 and 12 site systems, and it comes out to the 2 additional sites add roughly 1.1% additional coverage. And by what that means is instead of 95% county coverage area being covered, it's 96.1%. So for the 2 additional towers, it's 1% extra county coverage, and that's a trend that you'll see as you add more towers. The next tower will be about 0.2%. The next one will be about 0.12%. And it's kind of diminishing returns as you add more towers. And not only that, we found that as you add past 12 sites, there's something called simulcast distortion that occurs, where essentially it's interference in the system, and there becomes too much RF energy from too many sites. So it's something that we've considered, it's something that we've arrived at, and that's why the 12-site design is the maximum amount of sites that Motorola recommends.
Commissioner P.
I've had some people ask me too to have you do some explaining for us. And one thing, and I know Virgil can certainly attest to this, when I first came on the commission, we were hurting on our dispatch out at the Sheriff's Department, which I think they were doing fire at that time too. But as all of us that own PCs have found out, after a number of years, those things will either wear out, and at some point in time, they're obsolete because the parts are not made again. And I've actually seen about 2 generations of this out at the Sheriff's Department. And I'd like for you to explain to these guys, one reason we were looking at your system, one of the options that we've got is to lease, and you might go into that, but basically at the end of the lease term, instead of having an obsolete system that's wore out, I'll let him explain what we'll do.
So this is something called the System Upgrade Agreement and a Maintenance Contract. So what this does is it allows for you to never have to make this big of a purchase again. So as the out years occur, every 2 years, it's called a System Upgrade Agreement 2 for 2 years. So every 2 years, your system, software and hardware, will be upgraded to the latest release, firmware, and servers, or routers, or switches. So effectively what this does is, at the end of 10 years, which is the current schema that we've done for the out years, your system is brand new. So you continue this maintenance and this SUA, and at the end of the 10 years, your system is essentially brand new. All the hardware is covered. It's under advanced replacement. So if anything does malfunction, it's overnighted to you. A tech will be on site. Everybody will be alerted because the system is completely monitored, not only from Chicago, from our headquarters, but locally as well. So not only does the local on-site tech know, the system managers know, your radio coordinator knows, everybody will know that something's gone wrong and is being replaced actively. So to Commissioner P's point, that is one of the options that we've included in this project is the system will never be old. It's on a plan to always be refreshed, be renewed, all the current technology. If there's, I kind of liken it to the Windows 7 to Windows 10 upgrade. Not only is that included, but if your computer needs to be replaced as well, that computer's replaced. It just occurs. Our upgrade operations team comes in, they do every replacement, every hardware upgrade, every software upgrade for you.
Okay, other questions? Seeing none, we'll come back into session. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate your questions. Question's been called. We're on the board. Members, cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
21 yes, motion passes.
Commissioner?
Second resolution. Whereas Rutherford County has experienced tremendous growth resulting in the need for additional school compounds, And whereas it is the best interest of the citizens of Rutherford County that the school board, when buying acreage for school compounds, set aside property for a fire station, ambulance station, and office for the sheriff's department's use, and show the same in the plans. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners requests the school board to set aside property for a fire station, ambulance station, and office for the sheriff's department's use when purchasing acreage for school compounds and show the same in the plans. Resolved this 11th day of April 2019. Mr. Chairman, I move for its passage.
I have a motion for passage and a second. Any questions, discussion? Commissioner Allen?
I just have a question. Have we discussed this with the superintendent or anybody at the Rutherford County Schools?
I can tell you where this all come from. This come from it was a call meeting of the of public safety. We've just recently got a study back from TCAS that did a complete study of Rutherford County as far as fire protection is concerned, showing where fire departments need to be, where we're are vulnerable, and what we're trying to do out here as far as protecting the citizens of Rutherford County. And when you're looking at the future, and that's what this is, looking at the future about where we need to be placing some of these fire stations, you catch yourself in the same situation of where you place these things. We're seeing one of our places that we may be having to go at some time are schools. So we're thinking if the county is already buying this property out there, this is possibly the place we need to go. But now as far as going directly to the school board, this right here is what we're saying here. We make the resolution asking if they can do that.
Commissioner Gurley?
Yeah, there is precedent for this. There was property set aside or donated to the town of Smyrna when the Stewart's Creek schools were built, and they built Station 6 there. And it gets a lot of business.
I guess I just wasn't clear in reading the resolution because it said when purchasing land. We recently just purchased 2 large tracts of land, so I didn't know if you were including this, because that's one of the things I was just curious about. There's a concept plan at least on drainage and roads and where schools are going to be placed, and had they known they needed to plan for this, have we done that? So I just don't want to handicap them with something. I think it's an excellent idea. I don't have any problem with the idea. I just need to make sure that we're, again, in communication.
Thinking more so we're talking about possibly the future, because like you said, we haven't told them that at this time. You know, if there is room on that property, we would ask them, could they possibly look at that?
Other comments, questions? I have a motion and a second. Members, cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
21 yes, motion passes.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll call on Chairman Cush for the Public Works and Planning Committee. Chairman, you're recognized.
Thank you, thank you. What an exciting time for Rutherford County. 2020 is going to be a good year. Think about, look at all the improvements we're making. Solid waste, talking about transportation, getting our arms wrapped around transportation. We're going to be able to talk to one another from one end of the county to the other. It's going to be a good time. All right, I have a resolution, very short and sweet, and then I will explain that when we open it up for questions. Be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the amended and restated resolution to establish and govern the Board of Adjustment and Appeals attached hereto as Exhibit 1 and incorporated herein as if set forth verbatim be and hereby is adopted and approved and deemed the governing authority for the Board of Adjustment and Appeals resolved this 11th day of April 2019. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
I have a motion. Is there a second? And a second. Questions or discussion?
Thank you. Let me give you a little heads up. If you'll remember 2 meetings ago, this resolution came up, and I am a little better prepared this time to discuss this. This is not a new Board of Appeals. This is a long-time standing existing Board of Appeals. All we are doing is adding the authority for them to hear additional items such as stormwater complaints, noise complaints, and things like that. That's all there is to this. This board meets approximately twice a year. Commissioner Stevenson asked if these people do get paid. Yes, they do. It's $150 per meeting. And they hear a variety of things that relate to all the different building codes, both Tennessee, national and international building codes, and there are a variety of those you'll see in the tab of the 2-page explanation. So any questions on this resolution or what this entertains, or encompasses, I should say?
Any further questions? Discussion? We're on the board. Cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
20 yes, motion passes.
Thank you. Now I call on Chairman Robert Stevens for the steering committee report. Chairman Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steering has 3 resolutions for your consideration tonight, and then also 2 items for discussion. The first one is a resolution about the county attorney's office. Whereas after years of dedicated service, Josh McCreary submitted his resignation as county attorney. And whereas pursuant to the contract agreement with the county attorney, Attorney Nick Christensen was named and has served as assistant county attorney for Rutherford County under Mr. McCreary. And whereas it is in the best interest of the citizens of Rutherford County, Tennessee, that Nick Christensen be appointed county attorney for Rutherford County with an appropriate contract agreement. Now therefore be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that Rutherford County stay with the contract agreement with Josh McCreary and insert Nick Christensen as county attorney, with the revised contract to be presented at the May 2019 Steering Committee with advice on his designated backup as decided by the law firm. Resolved this 11th day of April 2019. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
I have a motion. Is there a second? And a second. Questions, discussion? Seeing none, cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
18 yes, 3 no, motion passes.
Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next resolution is one encouraging the state of Tennessee to remedy online sales tax collections with an equitable distribution of revenue collected based upon a prorated percentage of the population of the unincorporated versus incorporated population of the county. Whereas online sales continue to grow, and with these increases, sales tax collections have greatly expanded. However, under present legislation, these taxes are attributed to the location of a store, not to the point of the sale of the purchase. And whereas revenues are being withheld from the county in our public school systems because the collection rules were written when online sales did not exist. And whereas these outdated collection procedures have resulted in an unfair and inequitable result and should be remedied to better address the point of sale collections by considering the percentage of the population of the unincorporated areas as it relates to the total county population. Therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that this body does hereby strongly encourage the state of Tennessee to remedy online sales tax collections and create a more equitable distribution of sales tax revenues collected. And be it further resolved that in order to more fairly distribute collections, that sales tax revenues would be distributed based upon a prorated share of incorporated versus unincorporated collections to the county. Be it further resolved, the county clerk is hereby directed to forward a copy of this resolution to the Rutherford County Legislative Body for its use and information. Resolve its 11th day of April 2019. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Have a motion. Is there a second and a second? Questions or discussion? Seeing none. Cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
20 yes, 1 no. Motion passes.
Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our final resolution is one about distributing funds between county and city when there's a borrowing or spending on capital projects. And I do believe this bill has been pulled, but we can still move forward our resolution anyway. Whereas proposed House Bill 1352, Senate Bill 1216 requires all school funds collected by a county for capital projects to be apportioned among all local education agencies in the county on a weighted full-time equivalent average daily attendance basis. And whereas said bill, if passed, would be devastating to Rutherford County finances and budget. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners to stridently oppose proposed House Bill 1352, Senate Bill 1216, and request its legislative delegation to oppose said legislation. Be it further resolved, the county clerk is hereby directed to forward a copy of this resolution to the Rutherford County Legislative delegation for its use and information. Resolved this 11th day of April 2019. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
I have a motion. Is there a second? And a second. Questions, discussion? Seeing none, cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
21 yes, motion passes.
Motion passes. Members, that takes us to item D and item E on the agenda. Came from steering committee.
Before we get to that, it does appear that that bill has been pulled. I'm not sure what this resolution does. Can we carry it over to next year? And
well,
next year, I don't want to see it die, so
yes,
what that resolution will really do for us and how we carry it forward.
Commissioner, this is the first year of the General Assembly, which it serves for a 2-year term. Unlike last year, all bill numbers would die. In this case, since it was rolled to 2020, this bill number will still stay alive. So with our resolution going in, it will elevate House Bill 1352 to the front of the calendar. And so our resolution will actually go in opposition when this first comes up on the first agenda. Yes, sir. Okay, members, on item D and E, it came out of steering committee unanimous to send both of these items for discussion. First is item D, discussion of Human Resource Director petition going under the county mayor.
Thank you,
Commissioner
Mr. Chairman.
Stevens.
I just wanted to briefly describe how we got to where we are so that the members who may not have seen the steering committee can understand why we're doing this and not a resolution. So for several months, our committee has been looking at what does an employee do if that person has a complaint against the HR department or against the budget department. And we've batted around several ideas. One of those was presented in March by Commissioner Phillips, and no action was taken on it then. And then that idea, or a slightly modified version of that idea, was presented this month at our steering committee meeting, and it was sent forward for discussion without a recommendation to this body. And that's where we are now. Steering did not actually make a recommendation, yes or no, on this idea, but the vote was 6-1 to send it for consideration by the full commission. So that's why we're doing it this way and not presenting a recommendation from the committee for you.
So is there discussion on item D? moving the Human Resource Director, HR, under the county mayor. Discussion. Commissioner Garland.
Yes, well, I mean, aside from schools, who hires the most employees? The county mayor, right? So, to me, it's pretty logical that that's where, from day-to-day supervision, that should reside. I mean, the county mayor hires pretty much all the, except for those in the sheriff's department, which is a constitutional office, or in the other constitutional office, the county mayor hires all the general fund employees. So to me, that's really and truly, I guess my logical brain kicked in and said, that's logically where it should be. And I pretty well leave it at that.
Other discussion? Commissioner Phillips?
Just one brief comment. When this position was created 14 or 15 years ago, there was a lot of discussion about political appointments, and the commission at that time had a concern about this position being a political appointment serving at the will of the mayor. And that's the reason that commission set that department up the way that it was, reporting to the county commission, I think through the steering committee. I think we've grown to the point where we need to redo that and have this position report under the umbrella of the county mayor. That resolution, and I don't have a copy of it in front of me. If we're discussing it, it'd probably be a good idea to have a copy of that resolution in front of me. But what that resolution actually says is that day-to-day supervision, including performance reviews, would be under the county mayors. But the county commission, through the steering committee, would retain oversight. In essence, any hiring, discipline, or firing could not happen without the approval of the county commission. So that position, and what I've tried to do in my mind is take names out of that. Say the mayor and the department head. It's probably worked great the way that it has been, but that doesn't mean that it will with future mayors or future HR directors. And I think that's what we need to be considering. I'd remove the names out of that and just say this position will report to the mayor daily supervision, but still we have oversight. We approve the hiring, we approve the discipline, we approve any termination that happens to come along. So from that perspective, it would not be a political assignment. And I would encourage us to approve it and move on.
Commissioner Phillips, in order to do that, that is in a private act. So you would have to read the resolution in form of a motion to vote on the motion in order to send it to the General Assembly to change our private act to have that person. I believe Commissioner Cush has that resolution, if that's... I'm sorry? Well, I don't think it's going to move forward unless there's a motion and that resolution read to send to the General Assembly. That's the only way it's going to change. Commissioner Harris.
I want to make the motion to move it forward.
Well, I think you're...
Can I read the resolution?
Yes.
Okay.
This is the most recent copy from council.
Whereas Private Act 2003, Chapter 61, was adopted by the General Assembly to create an act known as the 2003 Human Resource Law. Whereas it is the best interest of the citizens of Rutherford County that the Human Resource Law be amended to provide that oversight of the Human Resource Department shall be under the direction of the county mayor rather than the steering committee of the county legislative body or the county legislative body directly. And whereas the provision of the 2003 Human Resource Law providing the steering committee of the county legislative body or other designated oversight committees subject to the approval of the county legislative body has the authority to appoint or dismiss a human resource director upon 30 days' notice should be amended as provided herein. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners of Rutherford County, Tennessee, that it is respectfully request the Tennessee General Assembly amend the 2003 Human Resource Law as follows. A, that the Human Resource Department will be under the oversight of the county mayor rather than the steering committee of the county legislative body or the county legislative body directly. And B, the Section 6 of the 2003 Human Resource Law be amended to provide that the county mayor, rather than the county legislative body, steering committee of the county legislative body, or any oversight committee designated by the county legislative body, have the ability to appoint or dismiss for cause human resource director upon 30 days written notice, subject to the approval of the county legislative body. C, that any provisions on the 2003 Human Resource Law that conflict with subsections A and B above be further amended or deemed appropriate by the Tennessee General Assembly. Be it further resolved that upon passage of the Tennessee General Assembly, that the said amendment shall be presented to the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners for ratification. Be it further resolved that the county clerk is directed to send a certified copy of this action to the legislative delegation representing Rutherford County, Tennessee, with this request for passage by the Tennessee General Assembly at its earliest opportunity. Approved and adopted by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners on this day, 2019.
Is that a motion? That's a motion. Is there a second? And a second. Commissioner P. Discussion.
Well, I happen to be hanging around here when we passed that original motion that's out there, or private act. And one thing I'd like to ask, and I'd like to be able to amend this motion, and I don't have a problem with what we're doing here. I think that the mayor does need to have some discretion and oversight, without a doubt. However, if I am to hire somebody, if I'm going to fire somebody, or if I'm going to discipline somebody, I think at least once a year I need to be in on an evaluation. Because, now let's just take names out of it, mayor and HR director. And it may not be Bill, it may not be Sonia, it may be somebody else in the future. But we, or somebody sitting in our seats, is going to have to say, I want this person gone, or I want to keep them. Well, how are you going to know unless you're in on evaluations? And my amendment would be to allow the commission to also evaluate along with the mayor, similar to what we're looking at in finance. Because if you're going to have to make that decision, you need to know this person's background, what they've been doing, and you may not know. And if you're doing an evaluation, or part of that evaluation, then you will at least have a good idea of whether this person should be allowed to retain that position or if they need to go. Thank you. I'll make that in the form of a motion to amend.
Motion to amend. Is there a second? And a second. Discussion on the amendment. Commissioner Gurley. I'm sorry. Okay, Madam Clerk.
The amendment was to allow the commission along with the county mayor to be a part of the review process.
Everybody hear that? Commissioner Piercy.
It hadn't been many weeks ago that you come to, I believe it was the Budget Committee with Mr. Nolan asking for another position to help you with some of our issues in this county. I feel like we've bestowed enough upon our new mayor at this time. He's very busy. Every time I talk to him or Mr. Sandlin, they will both reply, "We're very busy." I'm not sure we need to add this to him at this point. You know, is our system broke? Is the HR department broke under reporting to the steering committee now? Are there issues at the steering committee and the HR department? If not, you might want to put this off because Mr. Ketron's a very busy gentleman. Thank you.
Commissioner Harris.
Mr. Piercy, one of the reasons that I brought this forward is the last time that we had a review of HR was in 2010. So we have not been doing our job. And Commissioner P brought up a great point. How can we give someone a review when we don't even know what they're doing day to day? She works with the mayor day to day, and it would be best that she would be under his umbrella.
Commissioner Rather.
I totally agree with what Commissioner Piercy just said. I wasn't around when the HR department was formed and this structure was laid out. I have talked to some folks that were around, and I think you actually kind of said the same thing, that this was designed this way to take the politics out, if I understood you correctly. Is that what you mentioned just a few minutes ago? Oh, that was you. Okay. Sorry, Mayor. Am I correct in saying that?
Commissioner Phillips.
May have been a simple way of putting it, but when it was created, others that were here back in those days, help me if my memory doesn't serve me correctly, but the original intent was for us to create a new department, and that department head would report to the mayor. A number of commissioners objected to that department being a political assignment. So instead of it reporting to the mayor, it reported to the commission through the steering committee. So the steering committee was, in essence, supposed to supervise that department day to day, week to week, and month to month, which in my mind was an impossible situation. We've had excellent executives. We've had an excellent HR manager, and the system is not broke. But as I said, what I'm trying to do, or my thought process, was to take people out of it and say, where should this be? It still has oversight, takes the politics out of it, but gives that department head someone to report to, someone who can evaluate their performance, give them feedback, and if we want input into that feedback, I think that's okay. But instead of saying the commission, I think it needs to be a person or a committee. The commission is a little ambiguous. You know, how can the commission do a performance review? It probably needs to be someone. We need to be a little bit more specific there. But what I'm saying is that, yes, we tried to take politics out of it, and that's the reason that it reported to the commissioners. Not all of us was in favor of doing that. But to get that department installed, that's the compromise that that commission agreed to at that time.
Well, quite honestly, a lot of times politics is still there. Even in a company, non-elected people, there's still politics. So I know this was done for a reason back that many years ago. The only thing I see that has been broken based on that that decision that was made is the steering committee, and I'm not pointing anybody out. I don't know who was on it back then. It seems to me that the steering committee may not have done their job as much as they should, or maybe didn't understand what that looked like. You know, having Sonia or whoever come in once a month, that really is not oversight and supervision. So I kind of like, you know, I've been on the fence on this for ever since it brought up, and I just would really like to put an end to it. And I came to the conclusion today that 7 people could monitor, evaluate, whatever, a whole lot better than one. And I agree with Commissioner Piercy here that, Mayor Ketron, I think your plate is running over, to be quite honest with you. I think, it appears to me, you got a lot on you from where I sit. If the steering committee does their job, this could work well. And again, take that off somebody else and put it on the steering committee. That would be our job. I've evaluated, I don't know how many people, I did evaluations once a year on every employee, and I handed them a blank evaluation, and I took mine and went and filled mine out, and then we met so that I could look how they evaluated themselves. That was just one of the things I did, and it really worked out well. So I think between the 7 of us, or whoever that steering committee may be, we'll do our job and put a plan in place, a structured plan in place of who's going to do what, communicate with Sonia daily. I think between the 7 of us, especially me, I could be at the courthouse in 5 minutes. I'm not too far from here. So again, it was done that way for a reason. I think that reason, to an extent, still exists. I do agree that Sonia, just like any other employee, needs to know what the expectations are of who they answer to. She needs to know, she needs to have that structure, and she needs to be able to believe in that system, whatever that may be. So I'm good at leaving it the way it is, as long as the steering committee, which I am on at this point, puts a structure in place, a plan in place that Sonia completely understands and accepts, and the communication is there. We can do this. And you can please go help us find the solutions to the solid waste and school sites. Or, I mean, there's just a lot going on right now that I think committees could pick up a little weight and maybe handle some things. So for now, at this moment, with everything we're dealing with that you've got on your shoulders, I mean, I think, well, you go home maybe 4 hours at night and then you're back at the courthouse or something. I mean, you just got a lot on your plate. So for now, I can only support that, just to leave it the way it is for now, as long as we as a steering committee put that plan and structure in place and do our jobs. Thank you.
Commissioner Harris.
Well, I have a company, so I don't have time to come here every 5 minutes. So I know one of the things that everybody seems to think that you don't have time. I seem to believe that you can multitask. I believe you do have time, but instead of taking my word or Commissioner Rather's, I'd rather you comment and tell me if you can do it.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I appreciate everybody worried about whether I'm going to be here or something God forbid, happen to me, or I can't carry the weight. I was elected by the citizens of this county to step up and carry the weight. I am here every day. I put in a lot of hours every day, but I'm having fun. I'm really enjoying this compared to the Senate, even though I miss the Senate. But asking on this question, Ms. Stevenson and I have a good working relationship, but I feel that, as in anything, it could be better, okay? Anything that I'm doing, I want to make it better than what it currently is. And I think in working with her and having that connection with the employees, because there have been sometimes she has, honestly, she shared with me who she's getting ready to release and fire because of things that have been done. But there are other times that I find out after the fact that that person has been fired who actually worked for me, right? Not for the steering committee, but are answerable through their directors, or say it be at the ambulance department, be it, you know, not a constitutional officer, but anything in the general government. So after they're released, if a new, let's say, for example, if a news person were to come to me and ask me a question, it would look kind of stupid that I don't know that that person who's supposed to work for me has been released. So I think in bettering that relationship, I would like to have HR reporting to me, because we talk several times a week, sometimes several times a day. I mean, just this afternoon, we were together for several hours preparing our budgets. But just knowing what's going on at the time that it's happening is very important, because with issues dealing with people today, it's very important that the leadership stay on top of those issues to prevent lawsuits, to protect us. And I feel that's incumbent upon me in this position to follow through on that. So my position was, and from what I've understood, I haven't talked directly to see if Ms. Stevenson has a problem one way or the other, but I have talked to a few people that have told me that she's good with it one way or the other. So I'll just put it back in your hands to make that decision. Commissioner Piercy.
If you took my remarks as a personal attack on your ability to do your job, I'm sorry. I was concerned about all the jobs you have to do, not your ability.
I'll let you know when I'm carrying too much on my plate.
I'm very aware of that. That's the reason I brought that up. It
Yes,
wasn't to attack your ability
No, sir,
to do your
I
work.
understand that. I just felt a need to respond, Commissioner.
Thank you. And Mr. Harris, we're fixing to do what is it? Not an audit, but an evaluation on our finance director. She hadn't had one in 16 years. Why can't you do one on your HR woman?
Well, because
Commissioner Harris.
HR reports to steering committee, which I'm on, and then finance reports to Robert P. in the budget and finance. So that'd be something that he would address.
Other questions? Well, I guess we're back to the, Commissioner Allen.
I just had a couple of things I wanted to say. There's one thing that we've kind of talked around a little bit, and I think Commissioner Phillips got to this somewhat, but I don't know that he said it bluntly, which is, it's my understanding that one of the reasons that this was done this way, and maybe I'm assuming this from some of what I've learned in my CTAS training about why finance directors report to the commission, and that is that it was to insulate employees, not necessarily from political appointments, but they needed to feel emboldened enough that if they needed to stand up to a newly elected mayor, to have a little bit of autonomy to say, yes, you can do this, no, you can't do that, where they might be intimidated a little more if, you know, that's their new boss all of a sudden, which I can understand that. I personally have been indifferent about this. I don't really feel strongly one way or the other, but I just want to make sure that we're thinking through all of the issues. The other thing that I will echo Commissioner Rather's point, and that is, I think as commissioners, we have a responsibility to do more and not less. And so I would hate to see us assign something away because we don't want to do our work, because we don't want to carry our weight. And so that, I don't want to be on board with that vote if that's part of the thinking. And the other thing is, I knew we were going to discuss this tonight, but I didn't know we were going to vote on it. I'm not comfortable voting on a resolution I haven't read. So I had it read to me, and it had a lot of stuff in there, and there was things in there about oversight and processes, and that I don't think we've ironed out. So I'm just not comfortable on that piece alone. So from my thinking, if we're forced to vote on it tonight, I would have to say no because I don't feel prepared. So, but again, I don't feel strongly one way or the other about which way we do this. I just want to make sure we make an intelligent, informed decision.
Commissioner Gummon.
Well, I, for one, want to see you earn your money. So, I support this for the reason of that. I came from a department of hundreds of personnel, and I know how stressful it can be to try to figure out the pay and positions, new job titles, and all this. But there's got to be a better structure out there than coming to, nothing against anybody, but to me, it doesn't work. It hadn't been working, and I don't think it will as far as reporting to 7 people who can't directly be involved with this person every day. I've worked personally with Ms. Stevenson. I have no issue whatsoever. But we're in the 21st century now. One of the things that came about, Commissioner Phillips was involved, was one of the biggest things that happened in the 90s was the Rutherford County Pay Plan in 1995. Miss Allen was here, Mayor Allen. And there was a lot of changes going on. You didn't technically even have an HR director back in those days. You kind of took care of your own business. And the pay of county employees, and I'm not going to hit on this long, Commissioner Phillips and I have had fun with that over the years. All due respect, love him. But the pay system was so screwed up, pardon my French there, that it was pathetic. You had people so out of whack on their pay. And to be honest with you, nobody knew what anybody was making. And even the same time, you're talking about keeping politics out of this position. There's still politics in it, trust me. There's still a buddy system out there, trust me. And when somebody wants to hire, their buddy or something, they go through a hiring process. They're working directly with the HR director, not going through some other people. So there's got to be an accountability. I came from a long line of supervision. I was a number 2 supervisor for 18 years and another 5. That's beside the point. We all know the history. But you've got to have structure. You've got to have direct contact. You've got to have direct supervision, or you're not going to get what you want. It's not going to work. And we're at the point that we've grown. We know we're growing. It's time to move on. Now, I'm going to support the resolution.
Other discussion? Seeing none, we're on the amendment to the resolution. Madam Clerk, if you would, read the amendment.
The amendment is to allow the commission, along with the county mayor, to be part of the review process.
Okay. All in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. All opposed? Okay, we're back on the resolution as amended. Will be on the board because it is a resolution. All right, you're on the board, members.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
16 yes, 5 no. Motion passes.
Okay, next item of discussion is I'm sorry, discussion, item E, discussion of commission chairman structure. Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's
Commissioner.
getting late, and I was just going to make a motion to defer this to next month so we can get back to the school item.
All right. Motion and a second to defer, and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're back on the issue with the school. I believe, Mr. Sandvig, have you? Yes, sir. Okay. Chair will entertain a motion to suspend the rules to allow Mr. Sandvig to come forward and tell us what you were able to find out. Have a motion to suspend the rules and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, motion carries. Ms. Sandvig, if you'll come up and share with us.
I couldn't access it on my phone. I was thinking we had shifted it, and that was Mr. Greg Brooks' recollection also. We did shift it over away from that lot line, and it's a bit to the east of the center of that property now. The landowners were quite willing to do that, and it will be a private road. So it is not infringing on the other landowners' property as you were concerned that it was originally, but that was shifted, sir.
Mr. Piercy.
My concern was why wasn't it over on the property line next to the man being paid for the property? But like Mr. Stevens said, it's late. You've already got your drawings drawn for your road. I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sandvig. Well, we'll come back out of recess. Mr. Piercy, I believe the last motion, would you like to, that was seconded by Mr. Johnson, would you like to withdraw that?
I will withdraw my motion.
All right, and second, will you withdraw, Commissioner Johnson? Both, that motion is withdrawn. We're back on the resolution. Madam Secretary, just refresh everybody's memory. Does everybody understand what the resolution is? We're back on it. If not, we'll be on the board. All members cast their vote.
This is anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
20 yes, motion passes.
Motion passes. Okay, that brings us to statements and announcements. Yes.
I noticed Mr. Greg Tucker is here.
I was getting ready to bring him up. Okay. Mr. Tucker is here, but I was going to ask for statements and announcements, and I was going to let Mr. Tucker come up since I did ask him. Hang on just a second, Mr. Tucker. One announcement from Commissioner Allen.
Everybody received notification from Vicki that we're having a tour Saturday morning at 9 a.m. We're going to meet at the Laverne High School Stadium, and then we're going to go look at the Smyrna Stadium. The issue is where the concessions and the restrooms are placed. We have a lot of new commissioners on here who have not seen this problem. This has stayed on the building plan and keeps getting rolled year after year after year. I have not passionately fought for this like I probably should, because it's hard to do that when you've got to build classrooms every year. I finally came to the conclusion we're at the place just like a couple trying to plan to have a baby. There's never going to be a good time to have a baby. There's never going to be a good time to take care of this issue, and it's become a safety issue. And I need everyone to see that so that we can really evaluate this honestly. So I really need, if you can, I need every one of you who is going to go, I need for you to let me know that tonight, because they are calling for some inclement weather on Saturday. If we're going to cancel that, I just want to call the ones who were coming. I don't want to call all 21 of you. So if you'll please let me know tonight what your intentions are about attending on Saturday. And then if we are rained out on Saturday, we'll have a rain date, which will be 2 weeks later. We're not going to do it Easter weekend. We'll do it 2 weeks later on that 27th. And again, everybody would be invited again. But if you can, please let me know tonight if if you had any intention to come on Saturday. Thanks.
Statements, Commissioner Gammon.
My handsome brother wanted me to remind people that rain or shine, Laverne's having their ham breakfast on Saturday also.
Absolutely. Kittrell's not, Laverne is.
There you go.
All right. Any other statements and announcements? Commissioner Reed.
Well, I'm going to give you the opportunity to come out and see where that ham is produced on Saturday. Ventures in Agriculture is happening at the Lane Agri Park. This is a major event that is dealing with agriculture. It happens there every year. We'll have everything from the cows to the sheep to the pigs to horses. And rain or shine, we'll be there teaching people about agriculture, where their food comes from, to get an opportunity to bring the children out. This is a total family event. And I was told to give each commissioner a personal invitation to be out there to see this special event.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner.
Possibly. You'll have an opportunity to churn butter, and we'll have the ag simulator there where you'll get to combine corn. So we'll just let you take care of that. From 10 to 2.
13th, is that correct? This Saturday. Any other statements and announcements before I bring Mr. Tucker up? No, this is just. Yes, I'll allow you to do that in just a moment. Members, I need to. I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules. Mr. Tucker was not here at the time that we got to this on the agenda, and I thought I'd just very briefly let him explain to us what the membership that we approved tonight for the membership of the Historic Properties Review Board will do and how they'll report back to steering committee. So our county historian, Mr. Greg Tucker, if you will, just briefly share with the full commission what you're planning.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Yeah, I understand earlier this evening, or maybe it was sometime yesterday, you did confirm the appointments to the Historic Review Committee, it's called. This group, I think, is uniquely qualified to develop and implement a program to encourage and to help finance preservation of our historic properties in the county. The next step, however, we'll have to come back to you one more time, and I know there are a lot of detailed questions that over the next several weeks I hope you'll help us identify as to how this will take place. But basically, we will be abating taxes on funds that are expended to preserve or renovate historic structures. And it'll be time limited. It'll depend on a review and approval of the historic character of the property and of the proposed renovation works to be done. You will, I would hope, no later than in June, expect to have a statement of the protocol and the procedures, the requirements to qualify for this. Assuming we get it online, and I believe we will eventually, I believe we'll be the first state in Tennessee that'll take advantage of the statute that was passed about 4 years ago to do this kind of abatement. If there are any questions I can answer right now, I'd be delighted to do so. I do promise you a detailed statement of what the program will be in about 2 months. It is late, isn't it?
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Appreciate you coming out tonight. We expect you to come back soon.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner.
Mrs. Forrest asked to address them.
Yeah, Mrs. Forrest? We're still in recess, members. Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Ketron and all of you commissioners, Paul Johnson, our family wants to thank you for your love and your support, your encouragement, and this resolution of sympathy. our heartfelt thanks go out to you on behalf of Edward and my family that can't be with us. Our family moved here in 1973 for Jack to teach at MTSU. He taught marketing for many years, and he went on to become the Director of Small Business Development at MTSU, and he represented MTSU in several different counties. But Jack was a man of a strong faith in God, and one of his favorite verses was, "For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain." And so we just thank you for your love and your support. Murfreesboro has been a wonderful place to call home, and we just thank you for your service to make this a better place to live. God bless each one of you.
Thank you, Thank you, Ms. Forrest. Thank you. Two more things, members. I believe tomorrow is April the 12th, and we have two commissioners here that are having a birthday. I believe it's Commissioner Cook and Commissioner Dodd. So here's how we're going to sing this tonight, okay? We're going to sing Commissioner Cook and Dodd, all right? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Commissioner Dodd. Happy birthday to you. Yeah. We had a big sombrero, but we couldn't get it here in time. We were going to do that for you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Okay, and I hope everyone enjoyed their new seats tonight. I see everybody kind of leaning back and, yeah, kind of taking it easy. So any other business to come before the commission tonight? Commissioner Phillips.
I'm listening to Commissioner Allen a minute ago about the concession stands and restrooms and those kinds of things. My memory must really be failing me, because I thought a couple of years ago we approved all that, and if we didn't, refresh my memory as to what happened to the recommendation came out of Health and Ed.
We've only paid for design. We didn't approve any construction. We've only paid for design.
Okay, anything else to come before the body tonight? We'll stand in adjournment.